Bold journalism.
But Drew Hernandez is a strong-minded individual.
Exposing lawlessness.
Drew Hernandez, who is ideological.
Finding the truth.
And use the word Antifa.
This is what they do.
Battling
They're
mainstream
liars. The woke mob, all they can do is lie.
These are the front lines.
Welcome to TPUSA Live. My name is Drew Hernandez, host of Frontlines. We have a very special episode for you today. Jack Posobiec, host of Human Events Daily, is joining me on the desk. We're talking all about Great Reset, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, woke Disney, and much, much more. You don't want to miss it. But before we get into this great conversation, we all know President Joe Biden would rather blame meat producers for inflation instead of his poor economic policy. On top of that, the government has abandoned small American farms and ranches to cater to large foreign corporations. We, the American people, need to put our money where our patriotism is more now than ever. Now you can. Get American meat delivered with Good Ranchers. When you buy Good Ranchers, you use the code TPUSA, you donate $50 to us. It's easy, simple almost, but the impact is huge. Donate $50 to TPUSA and get steakhouse quality meat, chicken, and seafood by visiting goodranchers.com/TPUSA and buy your box of American meat today. And one more thing, by the way, Frontlines is now available on Apple Podcast and Spotify and other streaming services. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review right now. My name is Drew Hernandez, and you are now on the front lines.
Nothing more to report. With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Jack Posobiec, here we are, brother.
What's up, Drew? I gotta say, man, congratulations on just all your success lately. You know, the show, Frontlines, just completely taken the nation by storm, as you know. But no, seriously, watching you, just come on the scene, as I've seen a lot of people come on the scene over the past couple of years, and you just exploded. You found yourself at the center of some of the biggest stories that have gone on over the past couple of cycles and everything. I don't even think we've been on air together since Kyle Rittenhouse, like since that whole trial, and just incredible to see what you've done, the way you've grown and developed and evolved into what you have now, and it's amazing. So kudos, man. Seriously.
Man, Jack, coming from you, I appreciate that a lot, man. I mean, one of the first shows that I ever really did during 2020 was when you were on air with OAN.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's just crazy
yeah.
to be on this side of the table with you now. I never would have thought, but God is good.
I was like, who's this kid? And he's got some stuff. I'm like, I'll bring him on, all right. He's got some hair thing, I don't know.
My hair was blonde on
I remember
Tucker Carlson.
I remember the blonde.
It was weird.
Yeah. I remember the blonde hair days. I was gonna make a comment the other day. I was like, I see you've gone back to
It's changed.
the OG. I think we're gonna stick with the OG on this one.
The good old days.
Yeah.
But Jack, here we are, 2022. I mean, we've talked about the Great Reset many times. I think a lot of people thought it was a conspiracy theory, this New World Order agenda, this globalist agenda. Puppet Biden, President Biden, has been in office for a couple of years now, and they're open about it. It is not a secret anymore. You hear him use terms like New World Order. And right now, I think people are starting to ask themselves, what does this really look like? Like, where is this going? I mean, when you're obviously super active on Twitter, you're covering everything around the entire world. In terms of the Great Reset, in terms of this globalist agenda, how far along are we? Where do you think this is going within in the next, I don't know, 3 years?
Well, I think what's amazing actually is that we've actually got a situation now where if you can go back and read about people writing in Forbes magazine as contributors to the World Economic Forum talking about the Great Reset all the way back in 2016, right? All this stuff, that ad that everybody talks about, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, that was made in 2016. That's not new, that's old, that's 6 years ago, right? And they were laying this out, and they had this one article, and I talked about it when I did Spillover, in my city, we don't own anything, and a car comes and takes us wherever we need to go, and our prescriptions are delivered to us, and our doctors are virtual, and all these different things. And I feel bad for the people who don't live in the city, the people who still try to own things and live like savages. It's basically, I'll just talk Lee's Brave New World. And this idea that, you don't own clothes anymore, and, well, I don't have any privacy anymore, but we got used to it. Don't worry about that. So it's not actually new. This has been in the works for a long time. But what is new is the level with which the pandemic and really this kind of populist uprising that we're seeing right now that isn't necessarily left or right. It's just this sort of, up versus down kind of thing that's going on. That has thrown a wrench into all the plans of this thing. And so when you look at the Great Reset, the name of it, whatever it is, that they're trying to implement it as fast as possible now because they're terrified of what could happen when President Biden is no longer in office and that another populist conservative type is able to take power and that they're not going to be able to get all this stuff in. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these things like central bank digital currencies, like money printing, like the supply chains cracking. That wasn't supposed to happen. These things were supposed to come years and years down the line. Now they're trying to rush it all in before it was ever mature. And so I think you really do have a chance, because they're on the back foot of all this thing, you really do have a chance that if you push hard now, you can actually break it before it ever is able to take hold.
Jack, you're spot on. Throughout the whole COVID hysteria, so many people were willing to sacrifice freedoms for safety and security, right? It was, to love your neighbor. We were hearing all this religious, rhetoric from people that were willing to do this.
Well, I think it actually, for them, it's not just rhetoric, it is a religion for them, for a lot of these people. And it's not just on COVID though, but if you notice there's this sort of through line from, kind of the early BLM to Antifa to COVID to Ukraine to Fauci, vaccine, so many different things. And they all kind of fit under this headline of Mark Andreessen calls it the current thing. You must support the current thing. You cannot speak out against the current thing. You cannot criticize the current thing. And when you can criticize the current thing, it is no longer the current thing.
Yes.
Then now it has become the previous thing. So you actually can have some of these discussions about like Fauci and vaccines and mandates and lockdowns and all this now. But just a couple of months before, when it was the current thing, you weren't able to talk about it anymore. I think this is a classic situation of that frog in the pot, right? Where if you boil the frog on low, the frog will sit there, never jumps out, the water's getting hotter, the water's getting hotter. You got other people in there saying, hey guys, water's getting a little hot, maybe we should do something about this heat, getting turned up. No, we're fine. Frog gets cooked. But if you turn the heat up too much, the frog will jump out of the pot. And so that's the situation we're in now. The heat is being turned up too fast. Too many of the frogs in the pot are understanding the situation that they're in, and more people are jumping out. And so, to carry that all the way through, some people say, well, that's a conspiracy, that's a conspiracy theory, that's a conspiracy theory. We've now entered the point that when the mainstream media comes down and pushes, one of these PolitiFact fact checks or Instagram and Facebook always kind of tee off of that, it's almost like that you've struck a nerve when one of the fact checks comes down, because that means that you've short-circuited the programming somewhere and they're pushing out a new, kind of patch for the narrative because, well, something's happened that's broken the narrative, and now we have to, what are these units in Ukraine with the swastikas running around? Who are those guys on? Oh no, don't talk about those guys. And then, so first it's don't talk about those guys, then it's, okay, well those guys are there, but there are not that many of them. And then it's, okay, well we do have them, but we're gonna deal with them later, right? And so it's this thing where you have narrative oversaturation, and because they're trying to control so much of thought and so much information all at once, it's unsustainable. You can't do it because you also have the democratization of information through social media, through podcasts like this, through Twitter, through the variety of other social medias that are out there. This is what's going to be able to break that power. That's why after the events of 2016, the real populist uprising that happened, both with Brexit and the election of 2016, that's why they put the shackles on the internet, right? If that had never happened, you would never had censorship. No one would be ever talking about this stuff because they would still view it as this sort of just fringe online chat forum.
And that's not a conspiracy theory. Google admitted to that. After the election,
100%.
they openly admitted to
Alan
that.
Bukhari at Breitbart had the video from that internal Google meeting where they're crying, they're weeping up on stage. Sundar Pichai, the leaders of Google, and are saying, we're never going to allow this to happen again.
Exactly, and what's on the line is freedom. And we're seeing the destruction of Western society, and I want to talk about culture right now. Like we're seeing this with, this pedo simp, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, that is the most qualified apparently to President Joe Biden, that is so lenient on pedophiles, child pornographers. We're seeing the opposition of the anti-grooming bill in Disney getting behind that opposition as well. We're seeing that in Florida. We're seeing so many, the child mutilation of kids that identify as the opposite of their biological sex. These things have now become normalized in our society, and it's a further attack on humanity. So where does that play in as well? Because this is happening to the United States on a daily basis.
So I was just having a conversation with Morgan Zegers, and we were talking about the rise of social Darwinism in the progressive era, and how a lot of this really came to power under Wilson, and these Wilsonian ideas of having an organic state, and how that organic state kind of usurped the original plan of the founders for a functioning republic, three-branch democracy. Why do we care so much about Supreme Court nominees, by the way? Well, because we know that that's where power comes from, because we go to the courts for things now. We don't go to the legislature anymore, right? So we get laws from the bench. So take an extremely controversial social issue, some that's completely disparate, with like abortion. We know that abortion laws aren't coming from Congress, that comes from the courts. Same-sex marriage, that wasn't decided by our elected representatives, that wasn't following democracy, that Obergefell came from the courts, right? Regardless of what side you're on, you have to understand this didn't follow the system as the way it was written out. All of this goes back, though, to this idea that who did and what was it that the social Darwinists targeted first? God in the public sector. They targeted God in the public sector, the public square. And if you remove God from the public square, what you're really doing is removing society's direct moral center and society's direct moral compass. So if you take that away, you take away morality and the source of morality being God, you create what? You have pick and choose morality, right? Choose your own morality. And so that's what creates the conditions that allow a Ketanji Brown Jackson justice to come up there and say, well, I don't think that I'm paraphrasing, of course. So that's for PolitiFact out there, because I've been fact-checked like 3 times by them on the KBJ nomination already, talking about this issue. And when I said, she doesn't seem to think it's a big problem, they were downloading such mass quantities of child pornography, and they fact-checked me. Even though I'm disagreeing with her opinion, I'm making an opinion statement, a moral judgment, saying that yes, morally it is worse because there are more child victims. When they were pointing out, well, they said, well, no. The way she looks at it is, her view is that because of technology and because of society, that actually the perpetrator is a victim of technology and a victim of society. So therefore, we should be more lenient on the perpetrator because they are a victim of the situation that they're in. And I look around and I say, well, I suppose that's one view of morality, but I'm going to side with the children who survive this horrific, and it is rape, and it is torture, and it is abuse, and then they're not doing it for just 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long a video is. That's their whole life. Yeah. That's their whole life that they become victimized because of this, and that they have trauma, they have to go through therapy, so many problems. You can speak to any survivor of this, and it's very clear, and there's lots of data on this for the follow the data, follow the science crowd. But the idea being, though, is that for a KBJ, in her mind and in the minds of so many people in this criminal justice movement, they believe that the actual, oppressor, this is also a Marxian critical theory kind of construct. The idea is that these oppressors versus the oppressed, and that so in an oppressive society, it is therefore the oppressed who are then the victims of society itself. Therefore, their crimes are merely reflections of their own oppression. And so we should be lighter on them because they are victimized by the oppression of society writ large. It's completely backwards, upside down thinking to side with a criminal over to side with society itself. But that's what creates it, because if you take God out of it, then all that's left is power, and people deciding whatever they feel like can become their own morality.
And this is where we are, and I wanted to talk about faith with you too, Jack, because we have to show honor to where honor is due. There are pastors out there are churches out there that are aggressively, openly challenging these doctrines of demons, challenging these evil cultural ideologies, challenging cultural Marxism and these just evil ideas, right? But there is a huge part of the American church that is silent. They don't want to get involved. They'll call, I mean, I've been a part of this as well. When I was a youth pastor, you know, I would get criticized for speaking out against abortion,
Right.
and then the senior pastor comes out and says, we don't want to get political. These
I
aren't
have
political issues.
I have a buddy who he's actually not a believer, funny enough, but he's yeah, I'm working on him.
Yeah.
But he came up with this term for it. He calls it Omicron Christianity. So it's basically this idea of, so Omicron, of course, being the weakest COVID variant, this idea that it's highly communicable, but it doesn't actually share any of the traits of the original, stronger variant. You've stripped it away to all but its most basic, you know, surface level kind of perfunctory facets and features. So you essentially get this guy with long hair and a beard who's like walking around in sandals, and that's the version of Christianity that seems to be the one that's dominant right now, as opposed to this more orthodox view of Christianity, which is one that is much rooted in that society, but in a true understanding of what that society was like, of what religion was like at the time, of actual moral judgments, having this idea of there is a body of church law that coexists alongside the civil law. And so you do have church authorities, you have religious authorities that are as much power in society. I mean, this goes back to the crucifixion of Jesus itself, right? The idea that it was religious authorities that convicted him, and then the sentence was carried out by the civil authorities.
Yes. And I think, you know, I think there is a lot of cowards, to be honest. I think there's a lot of men in the church, not just in the country or in the world, that, you know, they'll use that as a scapegoat.
Oh, of course.
Right? When you're dealing with some serious issues, right? When you're dealing with some serious issues that the church should be openly vocal about, I think it's just a scapegoat to come out and say, oh, Romans says we, you know, shouldn't really get involved. The government's its own thing. It serves its own purpose. We're just to, you know, build the kingdom of God here on earth. But that's just a scapegoat to get out of actually getting your feet dirty with some serious issues here on planet Earth as a Christian.
It's what they're trying to do is create, and I do think there's people that actually do understand what it is and how it is this sort of softening, this chastening of our original beliefs and the original religion and the orthodoxy of the church into understanding that, no, when they say create the kingdom, what they're talking about is this moral order. And that doesn't mean this, you know, sort of like, what do they call it, the Handmaid's Tale. I actually remember I was there when the Handmaid's, do you remember they were using the Handmaid's Tale protesters for the Kavanaugh thing?
Yes.
So I was coming through Union Station, and when I worked at OAN, I used to come through there every day, and I saw a bunch of the protesters that were dressed up in the Handmaid's Tale garb, but they didn't have their hoods on. And they were all getting Starbucks. Like, I guess like their shift hadn't started yet. And I recognized Lacey McCauley, who at the time, or I guess prior to that, had been the head of DC Antifa, was dressed up as one of the Handmaid's girls. And I was like, oh, so I looked at, and I was live on Periscope, which was like Twitter Live, they used to have it. And I was like, oh, Lacey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you at work, you know? And, you know, realizing that it's, you know, we're talking about a moral order. We're just talking about having traditional, like, you know, that, what blows my mind, and Gen X is guilty of this, where you'll see a picture of like a family from the 1950s. They're dressed nice. They're going out. They're shopping. They're going to church. You know, dad's looking nice, mom's looking nice, kids are all dressed up, and they have this like visceral reaction to that, and they say, "Well, I bet he beats her at home." Like, why would you say that? Like, what possibly gives you any indication that this guy is, you know, a domestic abuser, and oh, I bet she hates him, and she probably is cheating on him every night and every chance she gets, when it's just a picture of a normal American family. And you realize the level of social conditioning and social programming that's gone in through, and a lot of this does come back to social Darwinism. And so we think as a society, we're still grappling with this massive upheaval that we've had first with the Industrial Revolution and now with the technological revolution that has given us so much in society, but at the same time, it's led us towards this path of hedonism and realizing that, and I'm a firm believer in things that are sinful are actually bad for you, right? And so in the long, at first, you know, this instant gratification, like, oh, it seems great, it's awesome, you get whatever you want, pick up the, you know, piece of glass and just order whatever you want, and it comes right to your door, you don't have to do anything. But over time, that turns you into, Wall-E, right? That's, the situation where there's this ark ship and everyone's just, fat and lazy and stupid and not really living life, right? And so to an extent, of course, in the long run, that's worth it. That's much, much worse for you. And so as a society, we have to find a way to balance this massive technological innovation that we have, but also not letting it destroy our lives.
And I think a lot of people have been indoctrinated in like universities, right? Especially millennials and Gen Zs coming up right behind them, where we should forsake all forms of morality in the name of liberalism.
Right.
They're being lied to believe that it's liberal to just throw all law. We can even say law. I mean, you and I have both been in Chaz, and we've seen these ideas in real time where it's like law gone because they think that it's liberal, but people need to understand that there is no society with that.
What was so amazing
you can't
to
have
me,
a stable society.
What was so amazing to me about Chaz? Were you there the night when they attacked that? It was like a car lot that was down the road, and then they were going after the guy, and it all came down to, supposedly this guy had been a thief and that he had broken into the car lot. I wasn't even really associated with Chaz, but he had broken into the car lot because he knew it was nearby and knew there was no cops in that area, so of course it's attracting
criminal
activity. This is also what led to the drug gangs going into Chaz late at night, and that's where you get this dude Simone and all his guys. But this thief had gone in, tries to get in there, and was stealing all the keys because he thought if he got all the keys, then later he could come back and steal the cars, as if like they didn't know that somebody had stolen all the keys and that they wouldn't think to guard all the cars. Someone, when I was getting started in the IC, I had an instructor at one point who was former NYPD homicide, and he said, and I was asking some questions about that, and I'm like, well, isn't that a really stupid move? Why wouldn't he just do this? And he said, Posobiec, most people, when they turn to crime to make a living, they aren't necessarily the smartest people to begin with. So anyway, dude comes back, and then he gets chased down by Raz and the owner's son. I think he had like an AR, and they were chasing him down. Then this whole mob out in Chaz ends up putting him up against, you remember this, he puts him up against the car, and then Raz says, open your bag. And the guy says, who are you to tell me to open my bag? And I was like, this is it right here. This is it right here. This is the reason for society, the reason for law, the reason for a moral code, the reason that we have individual rights, the reason we have all of these things that we take for granted. You take that out the window, guess what? Human nature, still there.
Yes.
So human nature is the first instance. And if that is the first instance because of the fall, because of the Garden of Eden, because of the apple, right, we have a flawed nature. All men and women, right, you have to say it that way now, all men and women have a flawed nature. We're all sinful. And so how do we deal with that nature? And so these are the dual tracks of it. One side, the traditional side, is we have a flawed nature and we must come up with institutions and laws to deal with this nature. But the other side believes we can make you better. We can reform you, we can be made into greater beings than the humans that we initially are. And so this is where you get the Great Reset. This is where you get KBJ saying that I can reform these pedophiles, sometimes repeat pedophiles, repeat offenders. This is where this idea becomes, and I'm not saying you can't overcome sin and addiction and stuff like that, but it's this actual belief that we can overcome and ascend from our human selves, but not in a spiritual way, because remember, they reject spirituality. So not in a sense of ascending to a higher plane of going to heaven, but actually here create heaven on earth. And that is deeply, deeply, it's anti-Christian, it's anti-biblical, and it is itself a form of blasphemy.
It is anti-Christ, because I mean, you take a look at the Bible, the word anti is pseudo-Christ. It's in the place of.
It's believing that we can be demigods.
Exactly. It's Satan trying to be in the position of God. And of course, humanity unchecked is going to do the exact same thing. So to go to your point, you're 100% accurate, because you're seeing this happen time and time. It's a cult. It's a cult. Everything that God offers, freedom, to have your eyes opened, all these things that the gospel offers us, like throughout the Bible, the left offers that, and these like leftist cultists offer the same thing, and these globalists offer the same thing, but it's a human device, and it leads to more tyranny. And it's like, we haven't learned from communism, we haven't learned from socialism. It's just an ongoing human device that just ensnares and oppresses people fully. What I wanted to ask you too, Jack, like what?
Because it's also it's also like when I talk about the moral order, and the reason I'm tying that to sin and also what's good for you is the idea that it's, yes, there is a path, and so people get so wrapped up in the idea that, oh well, I'll be punished if I step off the path. But no, it's not like that. This is the path to success.
Yeah.
Follow this path. Narrow is the path, right? Narrow is the gate. And this is the path that actually leads you to the greatest success. But if you want to, buck that authority, and if you want to chat, you want to get mad, and you want to resist, that's what puts you on the other path.
Absolutely. Last question, Jack. I wanted to ask you. We got about 4.5 minutes left. Right now, 2022, where we're at, what is the number one thing that you see on the horizon, or that's currently happening right now in real time, that's concerning you the most?
Well, I think it does get back to kind of where we started, is this idea that, as a country and sort of as a system, the West is responding to the rise of China. Now we see the rise of Russia, but we're responding to it in a way of our elites telling us, how can we become more like the CCP? How can we become more authoritarian? How can we have more total control over people's lives? The city of Shanghai, as we speak right now, has 26 million people that are under lockdown. They're bringing in military troops. They're forcing people into lockdown. They're putting them in quarantine chambers if they test positive, right? They know that this doesn't actually lead to greater health incomes. It's about control. And our elites are looking at that. And when I lived in Shanghai, I saw this. They would come in and they would talk to members of the CCP and they say, how do we do that? How do we get that? If you want to have a maglev, if you want to have a pipeline across Xinjiang and the Uyghurs are in the way, what do you do? How do you respond? They're trying to institute that system across the entire West. They want to remove personal identity. They want to remove national identity. They want to remove borders. They want to remove all these things that make us unique and special and creations of God, and replace it with this global, homogenized nothingness that they have total control over.
And we're seeing this happen time after time after time. And it's just, I know sometimes it could feel exhausting just saying the same thing over. We were talking about this earlier. It's like we're reporting on the same things over and over again. And without God's strength, without His grace, like, it gets exhausting out here.
The Lord gives us all talents for certain reasons, and He asks us to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. What would be, your advice to, because I mean, here we are, Turning Point USA. There's a lot of college students that are seeing this stuff, that might be hearing this stuff for the first time, maybe comparing what you're saying to their, psychopath woke teacher or a university professor. What would be your encouragement to like a young, because I mean, Gen Z is in such a vulnerable place right now. They really are.
Well,
what would you say to that?
I would say, you look at the two worlds, right? You look at the traditional world, you look at the world that made sense, and then you look at what's going on now. Does this country right now seem like it's being led by people who know what they're doing? Right? No, obviously not. And so maybe you should listen to the people who actually do have a plan to get us out of this mire and this muck and this just nastiness that we're trapped in right now, and actually go to more of a promised place, and not this false promise of everything's going to be free and you get all the health care and education you want and it's going to be perfect, and climate change will cease and there'll be no fuel and all these different things. But no, a true understanding and taking stock of the way life is, the way human nature is, understanding it and then overcoming it, so that as a society we can actually achieve that same type of excellence. And so it's personal betterment, it's social betterment, it means better relationships, it means better relationships with your parents, with your kids, if you have kids yet. I think there's so many ways that we can do this. Talking about kids, this whole idea about, you can't be your kid's little buddy. They're not your little buddies, right? They're your children, right? So you can be friends with them. I've played so many games with my kids, right? But at the end of the day, they're the children, I'm the father, and it's got to be that way.
Absolutely. Well, Jack, thank you so much for joining me. This is Jack Posobiec, host of Human Events Daily, the real 007, James Bond. Well, I mean, America, these are serious conversations. I mean, I don't know if there are people watching that, may have heard terms like Great Reset, New World Order, all these agendas that you may have heard on other shows or you may have heard on other networks, and you've maybe read an article that slandered someone saying that this is some kind of right-wing conspiracy theory. You don't need to listen to me. You don't need to listen to Jack. Just turn on your TV. They tell you themselves. They tell you that this is an agenda that's unfolding. Look what's happening to the kids, the children that are being targeted on a daily basis, where these open pedophile simps want the right to isolate your children. Look across the United States of America. Look at the indoctrination that's happening in universities. Look at the indoctrination that's happening in high school, K through 12, the list goes on. You always know where a society is when you look at how they deal with their children. My name is Drew Hernandez. These are the Frontlines, and TPUSA Live starts right now.
Thanks a lot, Drew. What's going on, everybody? Once again, welcome to TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. Here's what we're covering today on TPUSA Live. First, we'll break down we're actually going to talk about how President Biden had a pretty awkward little experience when President Obama visited the White House. Next, we're going to have Congresswoman Kat Cammack that's going to join us as well. Jobob's going to join us to talk about the Sacramento shooting. A lot of good stuff. We got Jack Posobiec here. It's going to be a fantastic episode. Definitely get ready, buckle up. TPUSA Live starts right now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Well, look at this couch. This is fantastic. Would you look at that? Alex Clark is here. Hey, that is a spicy jacket.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It'll be returned and sent back probably today because it was for a shoot today. So I'm just enjoying it while I have it. I am one of those. Is that stealing? No.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I have a weird story with that, but we got Isabel Brown here, Jack Posobiec. How the heck are you? Great to see you. So when Jon Root made an appearance on the Breakaway episode, the new fantastic transgender swimmer. I don't know if you've heard of this one, Jack.
I've been seeing this content come across my screen, and every time I do, I try to block it, and then it seems to like keep coming somehow from some mysterious, center of gravity.
It don't stop, but going back and returning an extra large women's swimsuit was weird.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So I think yours is going to be a little chiller than
mine will be a little bit more chill. And the good thing is I don't have to do it in person. I can just send it through the mail. Yeah.
I wish. But we're going to break down the date.
Alex is just getting ready for the great reset. You'll own nothing. When we talked
Shut
about
up,
it before,
Jack!
You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So this is what Alex does. She owns nothing and she's happy.
I do own nothing. Well, my boyfriend would say otherwise. Looking at my closet, he would say I own plenty, but
we're 3 minutes in and I'm already depressed.
Yeah.
Well, something that's probably going to depress you even more is watching President Biden kind of just wander around. When President Obama made his visit, obviously it was a big anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. That is basically Obama's pride and joy. And they made some revisions to that. And there's some videos out here that kind of looks like President Biden's in like Pulp Fiction. Check out this first video. It's really sad, Alex.
It's very depressing, just watching our president walk around. Has anybody seen my teeth? That's very, very disturbing.
Takes me back to high school.
The whole thing kind of reminds me of like when you have like a spin-off of a popular TV show and then the ratings are in the toilet and you're like, how do we spice things up? How do we get people interested in this again? So you bring back the main character of the original show to do like a walk-on. And then nobody cares.
True, actually.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
It's like, then they bring him back and everybody cares about him. And this is Biden kind of like getting the message. Because I think deep down, he knows.
Do you think that behind the scenes that it is former President Obama that's actually running things?
Do you think Obama is they?
They?
Oh.
I mean, it's not as direct as all of that, but to be honest, that like I've even heard times where like when Afghanistan was going down or the early days of Ukraine were going down, that Biden was trying to get Obama on the phone, and President Obama was like, "New phone, who dis?"
Oh my gosh! Well, why is President Obama willing to show up now? Why is he doing this?
Because
this is about him.
Because it's all about him. It's all about him.
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Do I think Michelle? It's possible.
Oh my
It's
gosh!
not impossible.
So you think
there's
he was kind
a
of
less than zero? Yeah, there's a more than zero chance.
Yes.
More than zero.
So
chance.
he was foreshadowing when he ended up saying that Michelle Obama.
But remember, she wasn't there.
No, but she doesn't need to be there because she hasn't really accomplished anything ever. Really, the only reason she would run for president is because of her time as first lady
Kind of
and
like
because
a
of his
certain former
popularity.
She has
first lady
insane
that also
likability.
tried to
Well,
run for
but the only
president
reason
once.
she has likability is because of her husband.
Well, yeah.
So she doesn't need to be there to get people all excited about the Obamas.
Isabel,
again.
Yeah.
are you forgetting about all the times that she went on Ellen
Of
and
course.
taught us jazzercise
and of
for
course,
kids?
revamped the entire school
Revamping
lunch
the
program.
lunch
The
come on,
most
come
important
on.
things on her. I actually feel really bad for our president in this clip. I'm not gonna lie. It gives me some like pity moment here. Takes me to that feeling of high school where there's like this group of people that you're like adjacently connected with and you're friendly with, but you're not actually in the group, so you don't actually get invited to do anything.
We have that
and so
video
you just
right
stand
now,
there
too.
kind of in the corner and you're like, hey guys, this is really fun. Thanks for including me,
Yeah.
but you're not actually included at all.
That's
It's really
exactly it.
sad. And the president of the United States should be the person commanding the room at the White House. Like, that is pathetic that you're just walking around looking for instructions what to do or desperately trying to make eye contact with someone to talk to. That's really sad when all of a sudden you're the president, you're the guy who's supposed to be calling all the shots, and nobody will even look at you in the eye.
I saw a bunch of blue check leftists trying to say that, oh, that video is taken out of context. The right is taking it out of context. Did
They're
you see
gonna,
that?
yeah, they're gonna, you know, that they did the same thing when I was like tweeting about KBJ, and I got PolitiFact, you know, and they were saying because they were talking about like her opinion on these, you know, the child sentences, and everybody gets all that, and they're like, no, she's saying that the guidelines were different, and I'm saying, no, I get that she's saying that. I'm saying I disagree with her, right? I'm making a moral statement, but you know, I don't think I could have been taking that out of context because I think I just wrote like holy crap and tweeted the video,
Yeah.
and got like 4 million. Because what it really shows, though, this is a guy who, and I track this very closely, by the way. President Obama has never publicly once congratulated President Biden for beating his all-time record.
Correct.
In terms of votes in the election. Never once publicly. He said historic victory, but he never once actually congratulated him.
Well, it
for
probably
getting a new
pisses
record.
him off because that's his record, you know, to hold. And then, you know, he probably knows as well as we do that those numbers are fudged. And so it's embarrassing for him. And he's not going to congratulate him because he knows it's all fudged and it takes away credit from him, you know?
And so Biden's sitting there, because you got to remember, these people, the neurotic millennials that run this White House, people like Jen Psaki, who will be leaving her role, go to MSNBC, that they actually believe this stuff. They actually believe that like the country loves them, that they're doing the good of the people, the will of the people, and they just can't quite understand why poll after poll after poll of these opinion ratings are just going completely in the tank. So they think, well, we just have to remind everybody that we were part of the team of the Obama White House. Let's bring him back, and that way it'll show everybody how great. And if you look, I don't know if they have all the videos on this, but if you look at some of those videos, where specifically the one where it's President Biden speaking, and then former President Obama's next to him, Vice President Harris is next to him off stage. Watch that with no sound on and just look at the body language, look at the micro expressions. These people have no chemistry. They don't like each other. They don't want to be there. None of them wants to be there. It's all forced. You know, Kamala has that like super forced smile on her face, like the like 10 times bigger than it should be smile. You know, President Obama's like crossing his arms. Like it's such a farce. It's such a farce. And I think people are seeing through it, and I think they're done with it.
We'll wrap up the daily briefing with this second video we have, and that's the video that every single one of us have alluded to. He's not a part of the group. This is depressing. That's how we'll wrap it up. Check it out.
You know
it's
what really?
Final take here real
you know
quick.
what's so aggravating about this video is that you see freaking Vice President Harris snaking her way in because she wants the photo up. Look, I'm standing next to Obama. You know, it makes her look good, and you can see she's leaving the real president out too.
Yeah, it really goes to show who's in charge.
He's like leaning over the shoulder.
He's like
Guys?
opening his mouth
Guys?
like,
Remember? Me, I'm here. Yeah. Okay,
Oh,
Joe.
it's so
All right,
sad.
Joe.
But hey, we're going to play a promo for YWLS, and someone that's going to be there is Congresswoman Kat Cammack, who is actually going to be on the show in just a little bit. Check this out.
And I hope you're filled with courage and conviction, clarity, and a little bit of wisdom. Know that we at Turning Point USA, we have your back.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Jack Posobiec, Alex Clark, Isabel Brown. I'm Jon Root. In just a second, we're going to have Congresswoman Cammack that's going to join us, someone that's going to YWLS.
Yes.
And I feel like you already kind of got the color scheme and the vibe going on right now.
I do, actually, yes. It's funny you bring that up because the reason I'm wearing this is because I was filming something special that was YWLS themed. So, yes, you are right.
Top secret project, huh?
Top secret project.
Very spicy.
Mm-hmm. And then something I know we're going to talk to the Congresswoman about is Title 42. We're talking about how the borders are just an absolute disaster right now, Jack.
Well, we got these leaked documents out of DHS. Breitbart originally had the story yesterday where even the Biden administration's own agency, Department of Homeland Security, and it says right on the title, they're predicting what they call mass irregular migration will commence when Title 42 is taken off. So we're currently seeing, just for the month of March that we just ended, 200,000 apprehensions and interactions. That's of people that we know crossing the border. That's with Title 42 in place, currently in place. Town I grew up in was 35,000 people. So this is 200,000 per month. You
So
take
that's
Title 42
regular.
off, it could double.
That's regular migration right now, 200,000. But if we get rid of it, what's going to be irregular? That's crazy.
You are essentially going to have a free-for-all. And so what the point of this document is, and I was looking at the date of the document was written in February 17th. So that means the reporting was done all through, they're talking based on January numbers. So I don't even know at this point how many caravans upon caravans are we going to be seeing crossing across Mexico, absolutely treacherous, women and children being trafficked across this border for money from these people. And the fact of the matter is they know it. They know it and they're doing it anyway.
And then now we have the Congresswoman Cammack on the line, Congresswoman from Florida. Tell us a little bit more about what you think about the ramifications of Title 42 being upended right now. Welcome to TPUSA Live.
Hey guys, good to be with you. Just got off the House floor from voting and sorry for the delay, but excited to have my first appearance on TP Live. And I can't tell you how excited I am that we have a platform now for millennials and Gen Zs. It's awesome. So, Jack, you were talking about Title 42, and just yesterday I had a meeting with Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who is the Secretary of Homeland Security. It was an off-the-record meeting with a few members of Congress and the Secretary, and I can tell you that it was probably the most aggressive family-style conversation that I've ever experienced in my time up here, and it was heartbreaking, frustrating, mind-numbingly just horrific to sit there and listen to the same talking points over and over and over again. The ramifications of Title 42 going away are going to mean absolute chaos in America. We're seeing on average about 8,000 people a day being apprehended at the southwest border. That doesn't include the gotaways. The gotaways are the people who are crossing away from where people are filtering through into CBP custody. They're the ones that are actually carrying drugs. Those are the ones that will absolutely get turned around, that have rape convictions on their record, violent offenders. That 8,000 a day, that will quadruple. Wow. And under Title 42, about half of those are getting turned away and the other half are being released into the United States. Title 42 going away means that everybody is apprehended, processed, and released into the United States. Just think about what that means for our first responders. My husband, he's a firefighter, SWAT medic. He, on the day that I met with Secretary Mayorkas, he had 3 overdoses that he responded to. And I actually gave the timestamps to Mayorkas. And he just looked at me with a blank stare like, and you expect me to do what? It was crazy.
Of course. So, Congresswoman, also, thanks for coming on live. Good to see you again. One of the things that we have actually been seeing from kind of both sides of the aisle in Congress, both in the House and the Senate, are a lot of people speaking out against Title 42. Can you speak at all to what kind of sense you're getting inside Congress right now as this issue? I mean, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise, but it seems to be really bubbling up now.
Yeah, you know, in fact, today on the House floor, I almost got my words stricken from the record because I referred to Biden as the trafficker in chief. And I was speaking.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go. I love that.
Yeah. I think we're well past the, decorum phase, when our communities are being ripped apart and people are overdosing, and the number one killer for people between the ages of 18 and 45 is opioids that are coming from Mexico. Mm-hmm. I think it's time that we take a stand. So yeah, I'm pretty blunt when it comes to this issue, and they threatened to take my words down, but they didn't. But I spoke out about it, and I've been speaking out about it. Think of the hypocrisy of what Title 42 is, right? You had Speaker Pelosi on March 29th issue a formal document stating that proxy voting in Congress needed to remain in place due to the, quote, ongoing health crisis. Voting by proxy is not only completely unconstitutional, but it's BS. If you are sitting on a beach somewhere because you just feel like you don't have to go show your face in Washington and cast your vote on behalf of your 760,000 constituents, that's on you. But at least show up and do the job that you're hired to do. But again, they kept proxy voting in place because of the ongoing health crisis. Hell, we've even had people that vote present via proxy. The irony is completely lost on the Democrats, but obviously we're kind of chuckling like you do understand what you just did. And then you fast forward one step further, and it's we all who showed up to do our jobs had to get on an airplane, which of course this ridiculous mask mandate, which is not a law, by the way, that is still in place, and it's due to an ongoing public health crisis is what they claim. Mm-hmm. So how can Speaker Pelosi and the Biden administration have it one way here in Capitol Hill and in the People's House, but then when it comes to the border, there's no justification or rationale for Title 42 to stay in place? It is insane. And the hypocrisy knows no bounds up here. It's wild.
Congresswoman, I'm confused because just a couple of weeks ago, we heard our president, our commander-in-chief, say we should finish the border wall and close the border to keep Americans safe. Where did that come from?
I think that the polling numbers that are plummeting through the floor are really scaring them. So they're going to say things that sound good, but the actions aren't being backed up. They are actually taking funding, redirecting it to Green New Deal programs. They're trying to slip in every single piece of legislation that we vote on, different elements of the Build Back Broke agenda, the Green New Deal initiative, any of their crazy voter initiatives. They're kind of trying to stick it wherever they can. The legislation and the action does not match the rhetoric. So they're going to try to say that they're all of a sudden going to fund police, but the money isn't there. The resources aren't there. The action isn't there. Same thing at the border. They have said, oh yeah, we're going to uphold the MPP program, the Remain in Mexico Migrant Protection Protocol that was so successful under President Trump. But when you look at the numbers, only 422 people have been expelled under the Remain in Mexico program. When we asked Mayorkas about that, he kind of looked at us funny and said, we are upholding it. Well, then explain to me why there's 47 different Border Patrol agents in my phone texting me saying, that's a lie. This is false. They are feeding you garbage. And so I just think that we have got to get really serious and really tough on people who even question that this administration is doing things as they say they are. They certainly are all about misdirection and misdirection. I really do think that we need to hold them accountable and hold their feet to the fire on it.
Well, these people could definitely teach a college course on deflection, and people could get a master's in that, and they'd be fantastic professors. But there's a reason that people reach out to you, like those Border Patrol members, because they trust you. And also, you've been to the border exponentially more times than the borders are. And that's what's insane here. She's having to jump on a plane and go fight for Ukraine, but it's not America first. She's not fighting for Americans.
No, and that's what we're seeing. Just literally 45 minutes ago, we saw on the House floor, the Democrats for the fifth time, they killed and struck down the American Independence Act on energy. That is the fifth time that they have put Russia before America. They would rather prioritize Putin and Moscow rather than Midland, Texas. And we're seeing this on every single issue. The borders are who went to El Paso once and didn't even go to the areas where they were processing. That's crazy. And then you talk to the secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, and you say, are you in charge of border security, or is the border czar in charge of it? And he said in a committee hearing, right after he called me disrespectful and rude for calling him out, he said, I'm the border czar. I'm in charge of that. They can't even get their own story straight.
Oh, jeez.
What do you think is the biggest misconception or lie that the government is peddling about the border that people outside of Washington, D.C. just aren't familiar with?
You know, oh gosh, I don't know if we have enough time in the show to talk about all the things that I think that they're really highlighting as their key issues for misdirection of the American people. The big thing, though, I would have to say is they are trying to tell the American people that these are people who are fleeing from war-torn countries and they're refugees. That is a lie. That is a lie. I have been to the border 3 times. I have stood in the processing facilities. I have interviewed these illegals myself. I talked to a 15-year-old girl. She was from Honduras. I asked her how she knew to come here. She said she got a Facebook ad. I said, okay, how did you coordinate all this? She said through WhatsApp and through Facebook Messenger, and all the logistics, the payment, everything was arranged through that. I asked her how much she paid. She said she paid $6,500. I said, how did you come up with that? She said, well, I borrowed from friends and family for the first half, and now I'm going to have to work off the second half. These are trafficking victims that are really recruited by the cartel, and then they get into the United States and they're trafficked. And these are minors. These are women who literally are being used as pawns to supplement the cartels. And if you think about the bare minimum that it costs to cross the border, the very, very minimum is $4,000. And that's typically reserved for Mexican nationals. Anyone who is from farther away, it's about $6,500 up to $9,500 if you're a Chinese national. That is upwards of $75,000 to get across the border by the cartels. But if you just go with the bare minimum, that is $32 million a day that the cartels are making, over $1 billion a month. They are setting up a narco state on the southwest border that is going to rival the infrastructure that we have. It's incredible how sophisticated the cartels are. And they know the laws better than this administration does. It is baffling. And so the thing I would say that is most surprising to me about this administration and how they misdirect is that they are literally using children and young girls and boys as sex slaves. They recycle them to get these adults across that have no relation to them. And then they use these kids again by sending them back to Honduras or Nicaragua or wherever. And then they make the journey again with a person that's not their family member. And because that is the United States policy, because the Biden administration, the trafficker in chief, allows it to happen, it continues to perpetuate. So that is, I think, the biggest heartbreaking thing. And I'll leave you guys on this one. You know, there was a little girl that I met on my very first border trip. She was 9 years old. And the Border Patrol agents, they actually pointed her to me and said, you know, you should talk to her. And I come up to her and I'm asking her, you know, ¿Cómo te llamas? I'm trying to get her to just open up a little bit. She starts trying to talk, but her voice is cracking terribly. And I couldn't understand her. The Border Patrol agent with me said, you know, she's 9 years old. We found her in a field. And the reason that she can't talk to you is because her vocal cords gave out when she was screaming because she was being gang raped by members of the cartel. This is happening and the White House knows it's happening. And because of their inaction, they're allowing it to continue to happen.
And it sounds like, too, we're going to wrap up here, Congresswoman, that there's a little bit of breaking news that Governor Greg Abbott from Texas is saying that there's going to be busloads of illegal immigrants being sent to D.C. Sounds like potentially it's just like, this is your problem and you got to try to solve it. What do you think about that as we wrap up?
Hell, send him to Biden's beach house. He seems to really love it there. And it's not very often you can find him in Washington, D.C. I think he spent more time at his vacation home than he has in the White House. So maybe that's where we should send those buses.
Yeah, he's going to need to buy a few more beach cruisers for all those illegals coming his way. But Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, guys. And thanks for everything that you do.
Thanks so much. All right, we got a message from our friends at Patriot Mobile, and we'll be right back with Jobob.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, the violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Like, get back in the game.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Jack Posobiec, Alex Clark, Isabel Brown of Jon Root. We were just talking to Congresswoman Cammack, and I think someone like that you love to see because people just trust her.
Oh my gosh, she is so real. I love her.
And she's going to be at YWLS. So like
Yeah.
someone that is just such a great person, not only to be in Washington for young, cute conservative.
Absolutely, she is a cute conservative.
I was just saying in the break, I'll say publicly that you know I actually go back like 10 years with Congresswoman Cammack. We met. She was a Hill chief. I was an intel officer. You know, and just to see where she's gone from that, you know, go at the staff level all the way up to now being a congresswoman in her own right. It's amazing to see, and obviously it's such a young age.
Wow.
Yeah, I think she's really going to inspire a lot more young conservatives to speak the truth, to say it like it is, to not be afraid to say what everyone's thinking, even if it's not in a very congressional way, and I'm really excited for the rest of her career.
I wish we had more time too, because I know she just got off the House floor, and I'm like, I want to know what it's been like when you have people like Cory Booker that's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the greatest thing we've ever seen, right? This is great. Like our ancestors are going, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You know she's got tea to spill.
She's definitely got a lot. But we did want to do a follow-up story about the Sacramento shooting that happened in downtown on Sunday. So when we mentioned earlier when we had Jobob on the show in person that there was one suspect that they had. And we know that President Biden obviously had something to say about that. He talked about ghost guns. He talked about how we need to push gun control. And then now we're finding out that there was 6 people dead, a dozen wounded. So obviously thoughts and prayers for everyone that's been affected by this. But it sounds like they've found 2 more suspects. And like Jobob was saying, we're going to play this video before we get Jobob on, how you read a few articles and it's like 7 paragraphs down, potentially gang related. Check out this video.
So just really quick before we get Paige on, this is a different thing. So have you guys heard about the gang affiliation with the people being shot and the shooters? So I didn't hear about that the entire weekend, and usually these things have a pretty consistent shooter was killed or apprehended or was on a suicide mission of some kind. Not the case in this one, so I got a little curious. The LA Times did a big article, and like 7 paragraphs down, they finally said gang related. That's a different thing than what the left is trying to push in the narrative now. So anyways, just to clear that up, this is a very, at least right now, and if that holds, this would be a very different thing than a crazed shooter who has mental problems, which is, again, a different thing.
And it sounds like now it holds water. You literally have the police chief, you have the mayor, and you have multiple outlets that are saying that this was gang related. So we're going to get a response from the man himself, Jobob. Welcome to TPUSA Live. And then actually, we're going to get Jobob in just a second here, but Jobob broke it down.
Well, I remember just seeing that initial video, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from the Philadelphia area, but that looked to me like it was some kind of reprisal, some kind of beef that was going on. It didn't look like it was just some, random spree killing or anything like that. And, and it's ridiculous, of course, to hear them talking about gun control in the backs of this, right? Because, fully automatic ARs and rifles aren't already banned in California. Of course, they're banned in California, but criminals aren't going to obey the laws. And so it doesn't matter what law you pass. It doesn't matter what President Biden says. They're not going to listen to it. They're going to find a way to get a gun, whether it be from another state, whether it be from someone who doesn't have a record, or whether it be over the border, because that's something that also does come over the border, right? And so it's ridiculous to me that it's literally 2022, and you still have people talking about solving crime problems by making gun laws. The problem is not law-abiding gun owners, and it never has been.
Wow. All right, we got Jobob now. Tell us what you think about your prediction that is now true, and everybody's admitting it.
Dude, so we were sitting on the couch, 2 days ago, talking about whether or not this was a mass shooting or a criminal gang shooting. Turns out it was a gang shooting, and that's what I have the biggest problem with right now, especially living here in California, where it's not a gun issue at all. I don't know what you guys were talking about before this. Sorry, I was a little bit late. But The problem that Gavin Newsom that Governor Gavin Newsom is going to have now is that they went so big on this anti-gun law or gun rules that they completely missed the fact that the person who they now have in custody, well, guess what? Was a registered criminal who had committed several crimes throughout the last decade. Most recently, this guy was in jail in 2018 serving a 10-year sentence. I don't know if you've checked a calendar recently, but it's not 2028. He was let out of the prison system because Governor Gavin Newsom and the policies that are going on in the woke state of California allowed him to be released early, and go figure, criminal continues to commit crime.
Wow,
Whoa.
that's shocking.
Check
Why
this
was
out.
he
This is-
released early?
So check this out. It has to do with this California law that unfortunately was upheld by one of the federal judges in it as well. California has overcrowded prisons. That's just a fact. Now, if you have an overcrowded prison system, what do? Do you build more prisons, or just say, let's just let people out of prison? They opted for option number 2. So they just let people out of prison as a result of having prisons being overcrowded. This guy specifically, in a letter to the Board of Parole Hearings, the DA that conducted the trial with this dude said that he is a violent and lengthy criminal and has little regard for human life and the law. Ahead of being released, the DA also said, if he is released early, he will continue to break the law. So not only is it not a gun issue, it is a California policy issue. And I don't think we're going to see Governor Newsom or anybody backtrack on that. They're just going to hopefully let it fade into the darkness.
And then, Jobob, are there other outlets that actually have a good reach that's telling people the truth plainly like that? Because I think if people in California are going to get the truth, because we're both from California. I grew up in California my whole life before moving out here. But like people, and you should have heard Jack in the background here. He's like, build more prisons, build more. And it's just,
the left and the media like to portray this as an overcrowding problem. But we don't actually have an over-criminalization problem in this country. We have an under-criminalization problem, because you have so many of these violent criminals that are being let out that, you know, if you're talking about nonviolent crime, that might be one thing that we can talk about reform on. But I'd like to talk to a lot more about these reform laws that are being then used for pedophiles, for rapists, for murderers, for gang members, people who are participants in these violent crimes. The death penalty, which has by and large been taken off the books in many of these states, like California. Wisconsin hasn't had a death penalty, so we don't even talk about the Christmas parade massacre that took place just a couple of months ago anymore up in Waukesha.
Everyone forgot.
And Wisconsin doesn't have a death penalty. They haven't had it for over 100 years at this point. And so, I'm all with you in, I want people to be able to find redemption and atonement and all of that. But at the same time, that the role of our society should be able to protect the law-abiding citizens, and we do not serve at the pleasure of the criminal element.
And then you just agree there needs to be consequences, like, right, Jobob? I feel like that's where everybody's just being coddled now, and they just like Congresswoman.
No, because I watched when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson got up there. She said sometimes people just accidentally click on a link,
for 15 minutes,
and for 15 minutes, and then you lose the rest of your life. I mean, and then Senator Durbin says, well, some people just make a decision. They just make a decision to go and view some stuff, and they shouldn't have to lose their whole lives after that, right?
So, Jobob, I want to get your thoughts on this. Right before you came on, I think Jack really hit the nail right on the head, that we seem to be confusing crime and the law, that the response to gun crime and massacres like what we just saw in Sacramento is always to add more gun laws to the books through some sort of gun reform. Obviously, in California, that makes literally no sense, because the World Population Review and every other news media outlet ever says California has the strictest gun laws on the books. But I find it so interesting that this pattern of the left is always, okay, people committed a crime, so it doesn't matter if they are law-abiding citizens or not. We have to change the law to make it harder for people to do the exact same thing all over again because they don't care about the law. But at the same time, the left is totally comfortable saying, oh, well, laws we don't like, it's moral to break those laws. So that new law in Florida that we all hate, we're all going to break that law as teachers in our classrooms. Where is that dichotomy coming from, and why is it so specific to the gun industry?
Well, Isabel, unfortunately, you're misinformed. Criminals do actually look at gun laws before they commit the crime. Clearly, that is the case. Just kidding. No, it is not. Where is that dichotomy? I have no idea, but it's really evident in this situation because of, well, just to give a kind of overview of how this all happened, this thing happened on Saturday night, and then Sunday morning, the entire lefty media, your big lefty politicians, the president of the United States, the mayor of the city, the governor of the state all said, this is gun control, we need more gun control. And then when they found out that, well, these people were already breaking several different laws, they just went radio silent, because then they have to talk about places like Chicago, Baltimore, Philadelphia, all of these other places that have super strict gun control laws that are just as bad and just as dangerous. To answer your question of where do you find that line, like, I have no idea. I think it is non-existent, and it's by a case-by-case basis that they just kind of pick and choose different instances that they can make a political point. This one particularly, though, is interesting because of how they're either going to, one, have to backtrack, which they won't, or two, just let it fizzle away into the darkness like I talked about previously, because, again, I hate to reiterate myself or repeat myself, but just to reiterate here, not only was it not a gun issue, it was the actual fault of the California government. So not only do they have do they not have a political stump to stand on, they're the ones to blame because they're letting people out early based on not having enough room in the prisons. Build schools, not prisons. That only works in unicorn land, and unfortunately, we don't live there.
And then we'll wrap up with this, Jobob. The mayor, Steinberg of Sacramento, ended up saying we spent tens of millions of dollars to stop gang-related violence and gun violence. And it seems like, Mayor, it's not working.
Yeah, they've also spent tens of millions of dollars to fix the homelessness crisis that has exploded. It seems like any time they spend a bunch of money to try and fix something, it ends up getting worse. Weird how that happens.
Yeah, I know during my 20 plus years of life in California, there was roads that I think were worked on when I was young, and then they didn't get finished until I left. They don't get things done in California. It's just getting worse. Stay safe out there, Jobob. Thanks for joining us.
Trying to. Thanks so much.
All right, we're going to be right back, and then we are going to talk about What in the World Wednesday. It's going to be a wild one. See you in a second.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
I'd love to.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. You had a big question.
Yeah, I
want
want to hear your thoughts on what we just talked about.
You actually asked where that dichotomy comes from, and it's actually Karl Marx. So Karl Marx, if you read the Communist Manifesto, Marx Engels thought, which gives us critical theory, so that's where critical theory comes from, and it's the idea that society exists in a form of two classes, right? And of course, he talks about the proletariat, bourgeoisie, but what it really is, it's the oppressor class and the oppressed class. So you have these two classes working in function constantly. And so the ones who are the greatest perpetrators of evil in the Marxian view are this oppressor class. But when you have a member of the oppressed class who breaks a law that was written for them by the oppressor class, well, they're actually victims themselves in the first instance of this oppressive law, this oppressive society. So this is why you'll get these criminal justice reform people coming in. They probably don't even realize that all of this actually does derive literally from Karl Marx, that it's this idea that, well, society is broken, and because society is broken due to oppression, then they're merely victims of society themselves. So there's no view of the actual, direct victims of the crime. And so it's this whole choose your own morality kind of thing that comes from materialistic worldview and believing in this sort of two-tier, and you're absolutely right to put it out that way. That's exactly how Karl Marx laid it out.
Do you guys think that the First Step Act that was put in place in the Trump administration was actually a mistake?
I think it was well-intentioned, but I think it was misguided. I wouldn't go for that again.
Why would you say it was misguided?
Well, I think it was misguided because we were told that, oh, this is just about nonviolent drug offenders, and it's for somebody who was, locked away for the rest of their life because they had a couple of joints or something, and this wasn't even a high-level dealer. But then you look at some of the people that it was affecting, and it did get you into this category of violent criminals. It got you into the categories of rape. It got into categories of even child pedophiles in some cases. And so when we're looking at all of this stuff, I get the intention. I get the, hey, we don't want to be these like hardcore conservatives who don't care about people. But at the same time, I put it on the side. And Alex, you're always great to talk about victims. Is that I do look at it from a people's side, but I look at it from the perspective of the victims of crime, not the criminals themselves.
Yeah, that's what I feel like with shootings like this. Every single time, it's just you're stomping on the grave of somebody. Like, I could only imagine what these families are thinking right now when you hear something like this, that Jobob just broke down, and it doesn't matter, like, really, like right now, like what their voting history was, but like there's a wrong here, and you have people in power that could have avoided that tragedy if they didn't let these people out of prison.
John, all of the things that we talk about here could be avoided. These are all political policy decisions that were made by people who had the best of intentions, right? And were not actually considering the consequences of their actions. They were merely considering how deeply held their beliefs were and how it made them feel. Kim Kardashian, I got her to delete a bunch of tweets the other day talking about the same thing, where there was this woman who's on death row for murdering her 2-year-old daughter, and Kim Kardashian is putting up this tweet thread saying, oh, it was an accident, she just fell down a flight of stairs. And we just go to the court records, and we've got the medical examiner, and we've got all this data on it.
Autopsy report.
Oldest lie in the book for domestic violence, oh, they fell down the stairs, right? And Kim Kardashian's out there talking to Van Jones and saying that it's got to be this huge criminal justice thing. Also, obviously, Kim Kardashian was the leverage point for the First Step Act. And so when I look at all this stuff, the fact that it ties back to the Innocence Project, who's taken money from the Open Society Foundation, they've
Which
really
is Soros.
gone with 100%, everyone's favorite Hungarian billionaire. That it's gone into this place where now they're actually trying to defend criminals and get actual criminals off of death row in some of these most heinous cases, because if they can do it to a criminal that's committed some of the most heinous crimes, then they can do it to anyone. This is about the destabilization of society and the inversion of traditional morals.
But you're absolutely right that it's about intentions versus consequences. And I don't even think most people in power, well, maybe not most, half of all the people who are perpetrating these crazy things right now in policy, I would venture to bet they probably don't even think about the consequences of their actions. They're probably rooted so far into that intention piece of, well, I care about people and I want to help them and we're trying to progress society. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's true. And this isn't Kim's first, kind of first instance of advocating for somebody to be, taken off death row that really deserved it. Because what was the other guy, Julius Jones?
Julius Jones.
So talk about Julius Jones and Kim.
The bigger one, honestly, for me, not just Julius Jones, but so Julius Jones was a guy who murdered a father in front of his 2 daughters in a driveway in his home, and they had his DNA from a bandana that he was wearing. It was brought back to him. It was ID'd, 100% him. She got him off death row. There's a guy on death row right now in Texas by the name of Rodney Reed. Rodney Reed is a hardened both murderer and pedophile. DNA proves all of this. but they try to play these games which is very interesting, by the way, because the Innocence Project typically has been known for DNA cases by going back to older cases before DNA was prevalent, and then getting DNA introduced that ends up exonerating somebody. Say, oh well, now we have DNA, it doesn't match where what was found on the victim under fingernails or some touch DNA. These types of tests that didn't exist until, because keep in mind, DNA really only came about late 1990s. You have this whole CSI effect, and that's why in the O.J. Simpson case, for example, clever lawyers like Johnny Cochran were able to kind of disavow the DNA, the overwhelming DNA evidence that proved that O.J. Simpson was the double murderer, because the jury just wasn't used to hearing about DNA yet. But the Innocence Project in these instances is actually arguing against DNA evidence. When the DNA isn't in their favor, they're trying to do anything they can to say, well, don't worry about the DNA, and that wasn't rape, they were in a relationship. Do you have any proof of that? Do you have any evidence of that whatsoever? None, but Kim Kardashian will go up, and Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz and so many of these other people have done interviews with these guys to try to just put this portrayal on it that, oh, this was a misunderstanding, and they try to throw race into it and everything else. But time and time again, and Alex has done this, and I've done this, you go right back to the court record. All the information is there, all the data is there, you can look at the investigation, it is cut and dried in so many of these cases.
Well, that's not to say that people aren't wrongfully convicted, because that does happen many, many, many times in our justice system, and there are people on death row who are there for all the wrong reasons and do deserve a second chance. But I just find it so interesting that as soon as this celebrity factor gets introduced, all of a sudden it's total pick and choose cases.
Well, and on this latest
whatever
one,
fits the narrative.
after I responded to Kim Kardashian, and then a bunch of people started, retweeting it, and then you get into it. Come this morning, she deleted all the tweets.
Which is interesting, because then I'm like, well, so then now is she like, oh, wait, is she having regrets and rethinking what she originally thought, thinking, oh, Melissa, what was her name, Lucia or something? That the woman that she's now trying to get off that's supposed to be executed at the end of this month, is she saying, oh, maybe I was wrong, maybe she is guilty? The evidence in this case is so overwhelming. I can't even believe the Innocence Project took this case up, because the whole thing, the Innocence Project is trying to say that this woman in Texas is innocent. Number one, they're using the diversity card. They're saying, well, she's the only Latina woman on death row, so that's why she should be taken off, which is like, what does that have to do with anything? Two,
she murdered her dog. She murdered her 2-year-old daughter.
Yes, she murdered her 2-year-old daughter, but also Melissa.
Abused and murdered.
Yes, Melissa, which I'm forgetting her last name. I think it is Lucia. Yeah, Melissa also they're saying she was wrongfully convicted and, gave a, what's it called when you admit to something but you didn't?
False confession.
Yes, she gave a false confession because she was interrogated for 7 hours without food and water. Which maybe ethically that's not a great interrogation, I guess, but...
Well, you can absolutely avoid conviction because of a wrongful
so
interrogation.
There were,
that's actually quite common.
So, and speaking as a guy who was at Guantanamo Bay, for a year, know a little something about interrogations that, we never did that when I was there. But that being said, we weren't basing, and the jury didn't make their decision solely on the basis of this confession.
Correct,
or supposed confession. It was based on the medical evidence, it was based on the data, it was the fact that when they examined this child's body that was found, right? They found evidence of broken arms, of
that had happened
of burns,
weeks prior, 2 to 7 weeks
hair
prior
that was
before
torn out, and actually the medical examiner who came in and the ER that was there said it was the worst case of child abuse that they had ever seen.
Yeah.
And then so the Innocence Project goes to Kim Kardashian with it and says, hey, tweet this out. She tweets it out, probably not looking at any of the stuff.
Because that would be my question.
Probably
then,
has them draft the tweets
clearly not
too.
looking at this stuff?
Probably
or
has
she's just like,
John, they probably wrote the tweets.
Yeah.
No, the Innocence Project got so mad at me.
It would mean a lot to us if you tweeted this.
Right. They got so mad at me over the Rodney Reed thing that they actually created, and someone sent it to me, like an internal document trying to refute everything that Jack Posobiec was saying about Rodney Reed. And I'm like, I'm not saying this. I'm just going in and reading the court records and seeing what was actually presented as evidence and refuting all of the crap that you guys are trying to throw out there, that it's just not true. I mean, I get that it's this cool narrative and, oh, maybe we can save somebody, but it doesn't work. The timeline doesn't work. The data doesn't work. The evidence isn't there. And the DNA, I'm very sorry, it's not your favor.
Fascinating. What in the world?
What in the world? Yeah, this is a little hybrid What in the World Wednesday here, because I think it's still spot on, because that's basically my question is, there's obviously times people are manipulative. Like, do we feel like that Kim K is just being manipulative about this, or is she naive?
I think she's
naive.
Or is it
just, it's just clout? Like,
well, she wants, I mean, this is the whole thing with her taking the baby bar 4 times and then finally passing it, right? Or something, 4 times, right?
Several. I don't know if it was 4, but
and
several
then
times.
you know, she wants to be taken seriously. She wants to be taken as someone who's more of a serious person, not just someone who sells, you know, undergarments and makeup. And then she was doing this interview with Van Jones the other day, and then we clipped it because she's talking about someone that she talked to on death row right before they're executed. And then she works in a Skims promo at the end.
No.
Like,
of the
give
clip.
them an example of what it was like.
Yeah, she goes, she's like, I'm talking, and then I'm crying, and I'm in hysterics, and it's so terrible. And then I had to go over to a Skim shoot, and we have the new line coming out for this, and I'm like,
Oh my
Jack
gosh.
showed it to me before the show.
yeah,
and
I
it's
showed
just
you,
like,
right?
How have
Yeah.
I not seen this?
We just got it the other day.
Shameless.
And I'm like, this is shameless. It's
That's
completely
disgusting.
shameless. It's
Kardashian
like,
court.
don't-
You're guilty,
Yeah,
and also
and so-
buy Skims.
So yeah, I do have some feelings about the First Step Act and Kim Kardashian's role in it. I think Kim's been very good, by the way,
Yeah.
in speaking out on a lot of things, particularly the Armenian genocide. She's one of the few people that does talk about that should be talked about regardless of the United States' foreign policy relationship with Turkey, which obviously committed the Armenian genocide, that this is something that the United States should recognize. And Kim's been very good. She's gone to visit it, she's gone to the memorial, they're Armenian. And I think she's a little bit misguided in this one, and she is being used.
Her heart's in the right place.
By these operations like the Innocence Project that realize that they can make money off of this, they can get Netflix miniseries off of this,
Yep,
they
and
can
they
make
have.
bank on all of these things when they're all lies, and it's being used to further, as we've been talking about here, completely destabilize our country along Marxist lines.
That's crazy.
do you think she'll actually look at these things and have a group around her that tells her, like, this is wrong, here's the actual court cases, here's how you can rectify this situation, and do the good that it seems like her heart's kind of behind?
Intention versus consequence.
I think she's
again.
going to hope that this blows over and nobody notices or draws attention to the fact that she deleted the tweets, because if she is to admit, oh, I was wrong telling you guys that this woman is innocent, then her credibility is busted.
I disagree with that.
forever.
I think there's absolutely no shame in saying I made a mistake, I was wrong. More people in power and influence
will
should
she?
do that.
But will
She
she?
I don't
won't,
think
so
she
instead she's taking the easy way out by
Right.
just deleting all of these tweets. But I see this all the time in politics, in the influencer world, in the content creator world, and of course with celebrities. The common thing to do in our country today is to pretend like you're an expert on everything until you realize, oh crap, I wasn't. So then you just delete everything and pretend that nobody ever saw it. And it's so sad. I wish we had the humility as human beings in our country today to admit, A, when we don't know something up front and say, honestly, I don't know, I have to go research it.
Yeah.
Sorry, give
That's
me a
me
little
every
bit of
other-
time.
every
Or
other minute.
B, hey, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. Here's what I thought. Here's why I thought it. And after I actually took the time to do the research, I messed up. Sorry. I mean, that takes 5 seconds to admit that. It takes a lot of swallowing your pride, which a lot of people in positions of power and influence don't want to do. But could you imagine how much different our society would be if the Kim Kardashians and President Biden's and Jen Psaki's of the world just took a minute to say, you know, I was wrong. Sorry.
But it wouldn't even be Kim Kardashian if she admits that it's wrong. You know, that would be throwing the Innocence Project under the bus, and so then
Well, even
it
they,
really
even
be
they
more
should
them
admit,
would
look,
have
we
to
were
admit.
wrong, because
No,
I
they
think that
should.
maintains their credibility as an organization. When they have the guts to say, hey, we took on this project, it was wrong, here's what we're actually trying to accomplish as an organization, supposedly, allegedly trying to get wrongfully convicted people
I think there's
off
only
death row.
one person in the world outside of us that's trying to keep Kim Kardashian honest, and his name is Kanye West.
Ooh, spicy, spicy, spicy.
And he's got the receipts.
Well, they're sending him away, you know, to rehab under exhaustion and whatever.
He's crazy.
Yeah, because he's crazy. So they're keeping him away.
That documentary's pretty good, by the way, too.
Fantastic.
The Kanye one?
Yeah.
Very, very good. But hey, we're going to be back for one last thing. Don't go anywhere.
China lied, people died. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail?
You haven't been paying attention.
Remember all your online purchases? But really, we're the product. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? Are you still with me? Because it gets worse.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got time for one last thing. Alex, Jack, Isabel, I'm John. So get this. I saw this news drop yesterday, and we've heard so much about the transgender movement, the Transgender Visibility Day. Press Secretary Jen Psaki was bringing that up when she got a question about fairness in women's sports and everything. And
today
there's
is also International Asexuality Day, just in case you
Oh,
guys were
huge
wondering.
day. Shout out to all the
Congrats, John.
asexuals.
Congrats. Congrats.
Oh my gosh.
Big day
I
for
was
you.
waiting for you to throw me under the bus at some points.
Big day for John.
Huge day for me, so thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for my big day. But Palm Springs is going to move ahead with this universal income pilot program for transgender and non-binary residents. So we're going to throw this up right there. So Palm Springs right there is offering monthly payments to residents who identify as transgender
This is a real
or
thing. This isn't
non-binary,
like-
regardless of their income.
This isn't like
Our
Babylon
producer
Bee
also
or-
said Long Beach, California, is also doing the exact
Yep.
same program.
What?
So this is a real thing. 2 cities in California are giving you a check every month if you self-identify as trans or non-binary, regardless of how much money you make.
Walk
you could
me
make
up.
$1 million a
Yeah,
year.
so
Sign
then
me
what?
up,
So then
dude.
we're all
Sign me up.
non-binary.
Great.
Then we're all non-binary. How do you prove? What do they want to say?
You can't, Alex, because you could even
Yeah.
say, well, I'm
Everyone-
non-binary, but my pronouns are she, they. I'm
Right.
like mostly a girl.
You know
but
what's
I-
going to
you know,
happen anyway, too. People are just going to walk up and say, oh, yeah, I'm whatever the sign says. Give me a check.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what is stopping them? Are they going to say, show us
Nothing.
your top 5 viral TikToks with blue hair and, talking about your pronouns? Like, how do you prove that
can't.
somebody is non-binary? And the other thing that this really pisses me off and proves that people have no freaking idea what their taxes are going to in their
Yes,
communities
yes.
and what their elected officials actually stand for and what they're advocating for. You have to know what's going on locally where you
Hot
live.
take, I disagree with that. I think people in California know exactly what their local elected officials are working on, and this is the crap that they want
don't
for.
think so.
I have prayed and prayed and prayed for California to turn around and be like, we acknowledge that we've messed up and we're doing something different. Every year it gets crazier. Sorry, John, I know it's your homeland. I know it's the homeland of many of our producers. California knows exactly what they
No,
are doing.
but how is
and
it-
they
like,
continue to
You're
do
gonna
it
dunk
over
on
and over
John
and
on his
over
holiday?
again.
So I know, and this is not me like defending California. There's a lot of idiots out there that are actually going along with this and think this is some sort of progressive
Mostly
way.
in these leftist
But-
cities. There are lots of great conservatives in California. We'll acknowledge that. But you can't keep voting for these people and not expect that this is the outcome.
But also, I do think there's a lot of people out there, just like we've noticed from every side of the aisle, they do not know about local elections. They
John,
do
what
not
are
pay
your-
attention
what
to
are your
that kind of stuff.
thoughts? What are your thoughts on breaking up California?
Ooh.
It's a hot question.
What I would say about that, Jack, is I want to make sure that my immediate family's out first.
Yeah.
And then
Of
if
what?
they want
Gross California? Bad California?
If they want to push, so my mom actually works right down the road from where that shooting was. She works at Sutter Health Hospital out there. So we're definitely trying to get them out here to Arizona. So if I'm able to get them out, and then if we just kind of cut out California
away.
and push that into the sea, make it an island, I mean, basically it's GDP is the same as just some other massive countries.
But how much of that
We
is
could
Silicon
survive
Valley?
without them.
That's what I'm.
So that's Silicon Valley and Hollywood.
Well, they're all moving to Texas anyway.
And
Austin,
Georgia from
Texas.
Hollywood. They're all going. I mean,
Right.
everybody's moving.
Georgia,
Okay, but here's
Tennessee.
my question.
I think it just, last thing I'll say is I think it should be fought for though, because you have people like Larry Elder that's definitely there's a few people, you could see
I
a little
agree.
bit of uprising,
I
but
agree you should
I don't-
fight for it, but you can't at this point, with all of the crazy things that have happened in the last decade alone, honestly assume people don't know what
State's
they're
too
voting
big. Break it up.
Okay, but what this boils down to is if you identify as transgender or non-binary in Palm Springs, California, you get
Free
$900 a
money.
month.
Yeah.
Free
You get
money,
$900
folks.
a month. So how is the left not going to eat their own on this? Because they've been, complaining about reparations for black people, whatever. Black people in Palm Springs are not getting $900 a month for being
they're
black.
not.
So how is this not going to end up just cannibalizing their entire
I have a
movement?
question. Do they require ID for the free money?
Exactly.
Great question. Does California
How do you
acknowledge
know-
transgender IDs yet? Because a lot of
Because
states
if you don't have
haven't done this.
ID, if you're not, you can't say homeless anymore, unhomed person. Have you heard this? You have to be an unhomed
Wait,
person.
what? I've not heard this.
It's a new one. You're not
I've
homeless.
heard person
You're unhomed.
experiencing homelessness, but I have
No,
not
no, no.
heard.
said,
Can't
yeah,
even say the word
unhomed.
homeless. Unhomed person. You don't have ID. You walk up. Hey, I'm trans. I'm 9. Whatever John is. And
Hey, I'm making money,
sign
baby.
me up. Free money all day long.
Here's
How do
what
they even
needs to
enforce it?
happen.
That's a great
Turning
question.
Just
Point,
go do it. Just
no,
go do it. Just
why
go do it.
Turning Point USA immediately needs to send John to
Pay
go
me.
as Joanna, because that's like a whole character now that you've created.
Yes.
We need to send you to Palm Springs, and you do need to go up to wherever this is going down, and you need to say, if they try to challenge you and say, well, you need to prove your residency of this city,
I'm
show your ID,
unhomed.
I'm
no,
unhomed.
challenge them on why do I have to show
I'm experiencing
ID?
homelessness.
And then talk about, well, I identify as this, why are you questioning my gender identity? And just push back.
I swam here.
Would they
That's
just
what I
give
just
you
said.
$900 in cash? Like, they're not mailing you a check. What are they doing? Are they
You
just
know, if you really want to
if you
sell
don't
it,
have a mailing address.
John, if you really want to sell it, you should shave.
Oh.
And
I don't.
the
and I
long
don't-
wear the
and I
wig
don't.
with
I
the
don't just
beard.
mean the beard. I don't mean just mean the beard. I mean go full Jada.
Wow.
Go full Jada.
We send you.
FBS, a full body
We're
shave.
sending
Wow.
Jon
Yes,
Root to Palm
100%.
Springs in a
Shaven.
blonde wig. Keep the beard.
Okay, with the
go
beard.
get nails done.
Bearded woman.
We're gonna take you to
Nails.
go get acrylic nails.
Yes.
We're gonna do the whole thing.
I'm in.
And
It's
then
like when
we'll
you,
go
it's
to
like when you
Coachella
wrap a
while we're
sports
at
car.
it.
We're gonna wrap you
I'm
like
gonna
a
be able
sports
to
car.
This is gonna be great. I'm in. I'm so in for this.
I think we
'cause,
should do it.
Like, it's similar to what people are doing in some of these council meetings, and they're coming in and they're just yelling. It's like, why don't we do this for transgenders and Ukrainians and all this
That's
stuff?
Alex
We can-
Stein, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alex
yeah.
Stein's doing that just like other people. It's
Yeah, he's
great. But it's
fantastic.
been an awesome show. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow.
China lied, people died. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail?
You haven't been paying attention.
Remember all your online purchases? But really, we're the product. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? Are you still with me? Because it gets worse.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. Today's top stories. Elon Musk, tech billionaire, buys a 9.2 stake in Twitter, making him the largest shareholder, and has now been given a seat on the Twitter board. Next, the Senate Judiciary Committee is split 11-11 along party lines over the KBJ nomination, forcing a confirmation vote delay. Third, the CCP is deploying the military to enforce the Shanghai lockdown. And finally, we've got new details on this. The Biden administration's mass migration plan offering a broad-scale release mechanism. All this and more ahead, Human Events Daily.
And I have a quick question on Elon Musk and him picking up a 9% stake in Twitter, which makes him the largest shareholder in the company. Obviously, the White House uses Twitter quite extensively, and Musk has been very critical of President Biden. I'm wondering if there is perhaps any recalibration of the use of the platform, or to what extent, the White House is using Twitter going forward.
It's a decision of a private sector leader. I don't have any specific comment on it, but I expect we will continue to use Twitter, as you all will as well, I would expect.
Well, that was White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. Not long for that position, by the way, as we broke on Human Events last week, and then later the rest of the media found out that Jen Psaki would be moving on for, I don't know if they're greener pastures, but there's certainly some type of pasture over there for her at MSNBC. She's going to be going and working on, now not necessarily filling Rachel Maddow's position, but she's going to be having a show of her own on the Peacock. So she's going to be on the Peacock. We're very excited for Jen Psaki, and we can't wait to see what she puts out on the Peacock. But the massive story, probably one of the biggest stories of this week in terms of freedom of speech and in terms of the tech marketplace, the marketplace of ideas, the public square, Elon Musk, the enigmatic billionaire from the tech world, going and buying up 9.2% of Twitter, becoming its largest shareholder. And now we're hearing, just breaking this morning, that he is going to be given a seat on the board of Twitter. Now, all of these things are very interesting and for a lot of reasons. But one thing that I really want to draw people's attention to is the fact Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, Joe Rogan, what do all these people have in common? What's the common thread that unites all of them? They're all free thinkers to an extent, but Elon Musk taking a charge lead, Elon Musk taking the leadership role at Twitter, isn't about Elon Musk directly. It's also about Gen X. This is about Gen X finally standing up and taking their agency in the world. And what do I mean by that? Well, remember, Gen X was always the generation that said, we don't care. We don't want any control. We don't want any authority. We don't want anyone to have power over us. That was the whole thing. It was the anti-establishment generation. But then something happened along the way with Gen X, where they became the side that started supporting this sort of anti-establishment establishmentarianism, right? And what I mean by that, you had so many people from Gen X that were supporting the leadership boards of places like Twitter and Facebook as they went further and further and further left. And so for most people in Gen X, it's this idea that they don't want to be political, they want to be apolitical, they don't want to get involved, they just want to be able to live their lives and, don't tell me what to do. It's the don't tell me what to do generation. And then something came along called millennials. And millennials started getting power at all of these various institutions. Millennials who grew up watching TV shows like Glee, being on Tumblr, Zoomers as well. And they became these hyper activists. So millennials are the hyper activist generation. And as we look at Zoomers, Zoomers are even more disparate on this. Zoomers have no middle. You're either on one side or the other solely. There's no middle when it comes to Zoomers. But what happened was Gen X saw themselves in these leadership positions and then saw these increasing levels of activism coming up in places where they told themselves that there isn't supposed to be any kind of activism. It's supposed to be don't tell me what to do. And so a sort of inverse feedback loop came about because of this. And what happened? So Elon Musk is going into Twitter, not saying that he wants to take over Twitter, not saying that he wants to tell people what to say, not that he wants to tell people what to believe, not because he wants to push climate change or war in any part of the world or any one of those things. No. He's saying that he wants to go to Twitter with a mission of restoring the principle of freedom of speech and free expression. This idea that if Twitter is going to be the marketplace of ideas, and it clearly is in the digital space, in the digital world, the digital dimension, that he wants it to be an even playing field where all ideas are actually able to have merit. You can argue them, you can debate, you can go back and forth, you can say, well, I believe this, I believe that, what's your set of facts, here's what I've got, here's what I've got. You can fight it out. Not people coming in with the ban hammer striking people down. And I want people to understand that a lot of this has to do with where Gen X is coming from. Again, the don't tell me what to do, don't tell me what to say, don't tell me what to wear generation. Now, those people who famously eschewed politics for so long are now getting involved because things have gotten so crazy. And this isn't going to be the start of it. You're going to see so much more Gen X activism.
I am committed to serving as an even-handed Supreme Court justice if I'm confirmed by this body. And I have a record over the past decade that's precisely how I've treated all of my cases. And I've been serving in the District of Columbia, both as a trial judge and as an appellate judge, and we see some of the most politically contentious issues. My record demonstrates my impartiality.
Okay, so we're following, of course, the latest developments in the confirmation battle that's turned into a really battle with KBJ, Ketanji Brown Jackson, her nomination for the Supreme Court, the first nominee for President Biden to be able to get up on the Supreme Court for the retirement of Justice Breyer. But just yesterday, the Supreme Court hearing that was held, a vote came down 11-11. The committee was split in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So how is it split? Because typically the committees, they have an odd number. Well, actually one member on the Democrat side actually wasn't there, and that's how you're able to have this split. So what happens in these situations? Well, certainly it creates a lot of tension, a lot of political pressure. I want to pump the brakes for a lot of people right now. I think that unless you start seeing large-scale defections, that KBJ, as we've been telling you all along, we're examining her record, and we're going to tell the truth about what her record is. And we've talked about these cases involving child pornography. We've talked about these cases involving acts that were done against toddlers in some of the images. But that being said, you've got 3 moderate Republicans who have already come out and said that they were going to support her. You've also got several moderate Democrats who came out and said they were going to support her, like Manchin, and then Kelly, who represents Senator Kelly, who represents Arizona, which is, of course, a very purple state. And so if you don't have people that are at the moderate wings of the party that are willing to flip on anything or willing to swing in any direction, then it just comes down to math. The math ain't on your side. So what you've got to do then, if you're someone who's on the side, if you're a conservative, if you're someone who stands up for the rule of law, the protection of children, if you want to actually go and lock up people who are the purveyors of this kind of content, of this kind of activity, you've got to go to those senators directly in those states, like West Virginia, like Arizona, like Utah, Alaska, Maine, and go to the senators directly and call them out. Otherwise, it ain't going to work because they've all met with her. So Senator Mitt Romney came out and said that he's going to support her. Now, this is interesting for Romney because, of course, he ran as the principled conservative running for Senate. He was also the presidential nominee for the GOP in the year 2012. You know something interesting? I was tweet mining Mitt Romney's Twitter account yesterday, and I said, this is really weird to me because this is a guy who campaigns as a pro-life candidate. In 2012, he came up with this huge statement that he pivoted on the abortion issue. And what did he mean by that? Well, he said, because when he ran for Senate all the way back in 1994, he actually ran as a social liberal when it came to issues like abortion. He ran as somebody who said that he was to the left of Ted Kennedy, who he was running against at the time, Massachusetts Senate. He later became governor of Massachusetts. He ran on a strong pro-choice platform. That's just true. That's a fact. You can go look that up. Everyone can see this in 1994. Then in 2012, he says, well, I had this conversion and, I was looking into stem cell research and I found out how these fetuses were being treated and I decided now I'm pro-life. Okay. And then he comes out yesterday and says, I'm going to vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is a massive abortion supporter. So when I look at this and I look at a politician like Senator Mitt Romney, there's two ways to look at it, right? There's the way that he wants you to look at it, that he's a passionate supporter of the Constitution, that he's a passionate supporter of principled conservatism. Or you could look at it as a guy who puts his finger to the wind, who doesn't actually have any principle at all, and his only principle is politics. And the only thing he cares about is himself and his own legacy and his own rank, his credential. He just wants to be some. Remember, his dad ran for president, he ran for president, they both failed. But then his dad became governor of Michigan, he became governor of Massachusetts, and later finally senator from Utah, just moving around until he can find something he can run for and win. These people are part of a political class. Do not believe anything they tell you because they could flip on a moment's notice. They are using you. They're telling you what you want to hear. They're telling you one thing when they run, and then when they get into office, they turn around and do something else. So KBJ is going to be on the Supreme Court. Perhaps Ketanji Brown Jackson will be our first Disney Supreme Court justice. We know how she's going to rule on these things. She's ruled the exact same way when she's been on the appellate bench, year after year after year. We know what her judicial philosophy is. We know what her rulings are. Mitt Romney knows what his rulings are. This is going to come down for 30 years. For 30 years, she's going to be making these rulings on the Supreme Court. So Mitt Romney, all the other senators that are supporting her, understand she is now part of your legacy as well. And you will be remembered for your vote all throughout history.
Arriving on high-speed trains, planes, and buses, thousands of healthcare workers have arrived in Shanghai. Suitcase-laden and masked up, they've been recruited to help carry out mass COVID-19 testing of the city's 26 million residents. Testing the megacity is no easy feat, and so far, 38,000 healthcare workers and medical personnel from across the armed forces have been drafted in from nearby provinces to get the job done, according to state media.
So the city of Shanghai, the place where, look, I lived there for 2 years. For a lot of reasons, I have this feeling of, I remember the people there, I remember the host family that I would stay with, that I would, have dinner with day after day, that they accepted me at their house. So the way it worked when I was in this program in China, I was part of this, foreign student program, your basic study abroad kind of setup thing, and then they have a host family, and you pay a little extra, and then you can go and meet with them, and they'll, you make dinner together, you make dumplings, and then while you're there, they obviously at that point were, pretty good English speakers, at least the two parents, and then, actually their daughter was a really good English speaker, and they would also help you to learn something about Chinese culture, learn Chinese language, and We've actually kept in touch with them to an extent, and we've heard that they're doing well, that they are okay. But the people of Shanghai right now, it was supposed to be only 9 days. Now we don't even know where the end is in sight for this lockdown. The authoritarian CCP leadership is now the latest. We're hearing, and this is out of CNN, and Zero Hedge has it, Beijing is dispatching the military to Shanghai as expanded lockdown is triggering unrest. Thousands of troops, 2,000 military personnel, and another 30,000 medical workers are going to be sent to Shanghai, a city of 26 million people, one of the largest cities of the world, is now essentially under military occupation by the CCP. And not only are they being held like this, they're being forced to stay in their homes, they're being forced into quarantine chambers, they're being separated from their children if the children test positive or if the parents test positive. They have total control there, and they can do this. So when I look at this situation and I think about the friends that I made when I was there, and I think about the people living under this authoritarian dictatorship, I have to step back and say, these are the same type of people that our leaders and our elites, the same type of policies, the same type of plans, the same type of powers that they want to appoint themselves here in the United States. They want you and your family and your children to be under this exact same kind of governmental power. And you can say, oh, well, it's about Omicron and we have to be careful. Keep in mind, we already know that Omicron isn't as strong as the other variants. They know that. But the point isn't making people healthy. We've already seen all the lockdown studies and shown that if anything, they had a minimal effect and probably caused more problems than they did good. But the CCP doesn't care about that because the point isn't health. It's not about your health. It's about power. It's about making sure that everybody knows in society who has power and who doesn't. In the CCP, they have the power. You do not have the power. Xi Jinping, he's the one who has total control in China. And by the way, speaking of Xi Jinping, ever since the Olympics happened, then the invasion of Ukraine happened, whole world wants to talk about Vladimir Putin. People want to say, what's he doing? What's he up to? What's he thinking? Xi Jinping, total free reign. I said it before. I said it prior to the Olympics even started. I wrote about this in Newsweek. You're going to see a situation where the island nation of Taiwan is completely subjugated. They're going to be invaded. They're going to be taken over, and they're going to be locked down by the Chinese military, the PLA. And the world isn't going to lift a finger to say or do anything about it. Oh, they might, I guess they might have some conference. They might release a statement. But at the end of the day, there's nothing. They have no leverage. These people have total control. And meanwhile, our elites are looking at Klaus Schwab and saying, how can we replicate that system and that program here in the United States and across the West? We want some of that here. That's what we want.
The fact that you have so many Ukrainians seeking refuge in this country of Poland. We understand that because we have in our southern border thousands of people a day, literally, not figuratively, trying to get into the United States.
So this is a massive story. New documents that have been leaked from the Department of Homeland Security to Breitbart reveal Biden's mass migration plan offering broad-scale release mechanisms. Randy Clark wrote it up. The Department of Homeland Security is disseminating a mass migration plan devoid of any removal mechanism to replace the soon-to-end CDC Title 42 emergency health order. We've talked about the end of Title 42. The new plan predicts the DHS traditional processing capabilities will be overwhelmed immediately, as we know, and require an increase in the use of, quote, broad-scale release mechanisms. The plan, reviewed by Breitbart Texas, acknowledges the end of Title 42 will likely result in a surge in illegal migration. Isn't that nice? Our own government knows what their own policies are going to do. The increase is already manifesting itself as apprehensions rise. In March, Border Patrol agents apprehended more than 200,000 migrants. 200,000 per month coming into this country, and that's with Title 42 in place. So what happens when Title 42 takes off? The draft plan, recently circulated to senior DHS staff, is dated February 17, 2022. A source within the agency not authorized to speak to the media says the plan offers no concrete options other than to exhaust more resources to absorb what will likely be a historic wave of migrants at the southern border. What is it called? The Southwest Border Mass Irregular Migration Contingency Plan. This is completely insane. Your own government, ladies and gentlemen, knows exactly what's going to happen. They're telling you what's going to happen. Keep in mind, this was written in February, so the work was probably done in January, a month before the 200,000 came up in March. They know exactly what they're doing. Now, I'm familiar with Hanlon's razor, right? Hanlon's razor is, do not attribute to malice that which you can attribute to incompetence. That's Hanlon's razor. That being said, when DHS is producing documents that tell you, they say, sir, there's going to be a massive surge of migrants if you take off Title 42, this public health order, the current thing, it was signed by President Trump all the way back in the early stages of the pandemic, early stages of 2020, and there's going to be a mass irregular migration coming forward if you take this thing off. Sir, that's what's going to happen, just so you know. They're doing it anyway. They're taking it off the books. So when I see things like that and we get documents like this, you really have to ask yourself, are we seeing the managed decline of the United States, like they used to say, or are we now seeing a complete free fall? Look at this in terms of economic policy, energy policy, our currency, our foreign policy, from Afghanistan to Ukraine, from Kabul to Kyiv. Our country's foreign policy is in complete shambles. Our border is about to be completely open wide. The floodgates are about to open. DHS knows it's going to happen. Your money is about to be worthless. Our economy is about to tank. And Jen Psaki's going to the Peacock Network. Of course she's going to the Peacock Network. Everybody is about to start running from the sinking ship that is the Biden administration. And that's all the time we have here today. Human Events Daily. Remember, our promise, our oath, our solemn vow to you: be good, be brief, be gone. And remember, your homework for us: share this out with just one of your normie friends, and leave us your 5-star review. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. What did we talk about today? Elon Musk taking a leadership position in Twitter, and then also the implications of that more broadly for Generation X. Next, we talked about KBJ, the fact that she is going to be getting in, and snakes like Senator Mitt Romney are supporting her. Third, we talked about the CCP deploying military assets to enforce the Shanghai lockdown. And finally, most explosively, the Biden administration's mass migration plan for the southern border. But before we go, it's time for today's moment of history. 82 years ago, April 1940, 25,000 Polish military officers and intelligentsia were slaughtered in the Cotton Massacre by the NKVD, Soviet agents. And it was covered up by the West for years because it was seen as politically incorrect. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
China lied, people died. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail?
You haven't been paying attention.
Remember all your online purchases? But really, we're the product. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? Are you still with me? Because it gets worse. If you didn't see last month's episode, let me fill you in. China lied, people died. It's the reality check of the century, yet many people seem to like living under a rock or quarantined inside. While the world shut down and cried, "Racism!" whenever anybody criticized China for the Chinese bat fever, China moved on. In fact, they threw a party, and then they got richer. China lied, people died, but a lot didn't. Hey, I'm still here. It's time to face the fact that we have much bigger bats to fry than worrying about the virus. China isn't the good guy. Never has been, definitely never will be. You think COVID-19 was China's first go at lying and killing? You really must have been living under a rock. If Xi Jinping and his communist cronies could leak a virus from a lab and cause the entire world to close up shop for years, imagine the power they'd wield if we don't get their fangs out of our markets, media, medicine, and leadership. Once upon a time, back in the summer of 2020, even the Pentagon framed China as a potential economic threat. But this was before the China simps lost their backbone. Officials claimed they were paying close attention.
So all these activities are going, it's straight from the Chinese playbook. Once again, it's just a little bit more obvious this time of what they're doing and how they're using a combination of compellence and coercion and everything else to try and shape the narrative and burnish the image of the Chinese Communist Party.
But apparently, we weren't paying enough attention. Maybe that was the point. Economically, China took a small hit with the rest of the world, but it also was the only major economy to register growth in 2020. In 2021, its post-COVID economy jumped 18.3% in the first quarter compared to the year before. All of this was in the midst of a global pandemic. Sorry, a plandemic. But the numbers don't lie. China didn't stay down for long. I mean, look at that rebound. But this isn't even the tip of the iceberg, which apparently, according to alarmists, is melting. Maybe you're thinking, shouldn't we care about the economy the way the radicals care about the icebergs? Nah, not when the Armani suit pockets of the 1% are fat like China's GDP. Let me put it plainly. Economically, we're screwed. Just kidding. It gets worse. You think we're the only economy that China wants to see fail? Actually, fail isn't the right word. It's not sick enough. These guys are redefining communism. They don't just want us to fail. They want us in the palm of their hands forever. Remember when it was racist to even utter the fact that COVID-19 originated in China? Cue the tiny violin. What a time to still be alive. Look, if you think we're the bad guys for blaming the communists for this mess, not totally sure how I can help you. All I can do is point you to things that are actually messed up, like taking advantage of impoverished nations. Ever heard of the Belt and Road Initiative? How about BlackRock? No? That's how China likes conducting business. To help me explain this, let's ask Jack Posobiec.
The Belt and Road Initiative is the CCP's build-out for a parallel economy using debt-trap diplomacy. As we've seen in the current crisis with Russia, when Putin decided to invade Ukraine, he did so knowing essentially that the West would kick Russia out of their economic system. But they already had a replacement in place, the Belt and Road Initiative, also known as the One Belt, One Road. And what it's all about is creating a way for the CCP and now Russia to expand their economic and political influence around the world and establish a system that exists outside of Western sanctions, Western banking, and the US dollar. Saudi Arabia is currently in talks with the CCP to conduct oil sales using the Chinese yuan. The Saudis are the top source of oil for China. So how is the CCP expanding the Belt and Road Initiative? Their target is to develop economic relations with the global South, Africa, South America, Latin America, the Middle East. The CCP offers generous loans to countries to develop their infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, railroads, airports, deep water ports, even government buildings. And when the countries can't afford to pay back the loans, the CCP says, don't worry about it. We'll waive the loan in exchange for mineral rights, resource extraction, and eventually military basing and status of forces agreements. This isn't just a plan. This is in motion, and it has been for years. The Economist is calling it an alternative world order. And if you think it's a long way off from ever happening, you haven't been paying attention.
Like Jack said, initiative makes it sound like an all-around positive endeavor. Positive for China's power, sure. Maybe not so great for the 144 other countries involved, specifically the poorest nations who can't use borrowed money to pay back borrowed money. When you find yourself in this abusive cycle, you become a puppet of authoritarianism. Just ask WHO Director General Dr. Ted. He's not a leader, he's not a doctor. And even though he's Ethiopian, he might as well be Chinese, because China's got its fangs in Ethiopia and the WHO. It wouldn't be the first time a leader like Dr. Ted was compromised, would it? When China lends a country money, it basically invests in that country's demise. Here's an example. The African infrastructure debt was estimated to be a whopping $93 billion a year until 2021. A situation like this is a perfect opportunity for China. China can prey upon poor nations with the resources it needs. Then, that nation isn't just in a heap of its own debt, it's now beholden to a global power it wouldn't ever be able to repay. China doesn't care if it gets its money back because now it has more control. You know what's fun and ironic? The left's tantrum about America's student debt. Why isn't the debt of a whole nation more concerning? Why does no one seem to care about China buying up property here in the United States? Looking at you, BlackRock. Probably because China is super secretive about its initiative. And we weren't asking these questions before COVID, so I guess that's why we aren't asking them now. Am I the only one who wants to know why the rich got so much richer? That is why I've got to bring up lockdowns. Lockdowns definitely made the rich even richer. Meanwhile, consumers got more dependent upon big corporations. You know I'm right. Remember all your online purchases? All that excess toilet paper that ended up crowding bathroom cabinets everywhere and stalking the bank accounts of Xi and his cronies. Get this, China's trade surplus reached record highs, and across the board, global billionaires got $1.6 trillion richer. Jeez, I guess you all did go ham on those toilet paper purchases. Look, I'm not saying the lab leaked on purpose, but the results have been too convenient. There's nothing better than a cowardly adversary. And it's not like America's fear of COVID has gone anywhere. I don't know what's worse, being forced to wear a mask or fearing for your life if you don't. Actually, yes, I do know what's worse. Realizing that COVID lockdowns during the first wave only prevented 0.2% of COVID deaths. No, I'm not lying to you like China and the radical left have. 0.2%. Still, fear is as commonplace as a "we're hiring" sign. Compared to April 2020, US employment is down by 3.6 million jobs. Then, in November 2021, 4.5 million American employees quit their jobs, which is a dream for any superpower looking to one-up the competition. Lockdowns didn't just kick our economy while it was rising. It enforced a dangerous mentality that kept people paranoid inside their homes. Are you still with me? Because it gets worse. Have you heard that we're running out of blood? I figured you hadn't. Thanks for the pandemic, China. It closed our schools, slowed our blood donations, and now American hospitals are lucky to receive the bare minimum of necessary blood products. This sounds to me like a slow bleed in America's medical infrastructure. Okay, so some of you don't care about blood. It's not hitting close enough to home for you. How about food? I think you've probably heard of that. Maybe you're not going hungry yet, but we've seen this story before, and it doesn't end well. #Venezuela. The new normal everyone talked about in 2020 is shaping up to look a hell of a lot like empty shelves, stagnant ports, and rising inflation. That is, unless you're China. This isn't a blame game, guys. Don't be so LeBron about it whenever China and corporations are called out. Anytime you claim to hate the system, anytime you say capitalism is evil, you're just hating on the very corporations who use your interests as their mouthpiece, making you look a little hypocritical. How not to be a hypocrite, and more importantly, how not to give away your liberties? Ask questions. Who benefited from America's lockdowns? Not America, China. And who turns a blind eye to the blood on China's hands? Corporations. The same guys who keep getting richer while also pushing a Marxist agenda. Since China benefited from our lockdowns, think of how well they're doing every time another company goes woke or another variant drives people back inside. We've entered into an age of watered down legislation. The untouchable wealthy class determines how you should feel about the world it keeps locking you out of. Our ruling class isn't the guy we vote for, it's the guy we click subscribe to. We think we're buying their product, but really, we're the product. Sorry guys, it appears we're just below their line. I can keep the questions going all day. Which investment firm is buying up infrastructure in America under the title BlackRock? Who's doing their bidding? Who's insidiously creating debt across the world, specifically in the poorest nations? Who doesn't panic at the mere thought of a new variant? Who caused the holdup on our supplies? Who's been laughing in your masked face for 2 straight years? The last 2 years proved which American leaders and billionaires eat out of Xi's hand. We see the same behavior coming out of big tech, sports, entertainment, and perhaps more startling, we're beginning to see a union between our 2 biggest adversaries, Russia and China. Where are our allies? As we now know, they're being leveraged via the BRI and playing economic patty cake with communist China. Looking at you, EAEU. Clearly, there's a bigger issue developing. This is all a dark lesson for another day, and we'll get there. America's rising global adversary is communist. If China has the audacity to put its own minority groups into camps, force abortions on women, and regulate society by a social credit score, it's not going to hesitate to screw us over any chance it gets. And their newfound love of Russia shouldn't comfort any of us. COVID-19 was born out of a lie, and we've been living through those lies ever since. Someday, the lie we've been living is going to look a whole lot worse. You'll own nothing, and you'll be forced to say you're happy to own nothing. I'd tell you to get some advice on how to deal with your local communists once things get that far, but I'm pretty sure all those people are dead. And if we don't start revealing the truth, future generations are gonna buy into the same lie of socialism all over again. By then, we'll just be a product of a new socialism that we bought into and can't buy out of. A new CCP, corporate communist power.
Oh my gosh, you guys! I am absolutely overjoyed by our new politics show. Look at this. Matt and Chrissy Hammer did everything. You can find their info in the description if you're looking for a conservative design company for your home or your business. Today we're talking about mom guilt, beauty trends, celeb drama, and more. So here we go. The first thing I want to bring up to you today are what I call show-off snacks. Please tell me you've seen what I'm talking about. It's when moms make these super elaborate designs with their kids' snacks all over Instagram. It's like snack art.
Thank you for the snack. It was quite delicious.
Mommy bloggers have been posting these like crazy lately. And the queen of what I call show-off snacks is Amber Filler-Up Clark, who is someone I love to follow, but whose personal views I disagree with 99.9% of the time, but that's okay. That's okay. She's making space designs, fire-breathing dragons, animals sailing out to sea, and fruit porcupines. Obviously, this is so sweet and adorable, but what I want to know from our mom-servatives is, when you see mommy bloggers doing stuff like this for their kids, does it inspire you? Are you like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take, 2 hours out of my day to prep their after-school snack, it's so amazing? Or does it make you feel like crap, like I'm a terrible mom, I'm not doing enough?
Wait a minute, don't compare, don't compare yourself to me,
They would never make. I'm not a mom yet, but I can already imagine myself seeing stuff like this and letting it make me feel bad for not being creative enough as mom.
Well, what's there to eat?
Pink, the singer, was butthurt that Rolling Stones made a 25 greatest Grammy performances ever list and didn't include her on there. Remember when she did the ribbon twirling thing in 2010 for Glitter in the Air? It had never been done before. When Pink saw this Rolling Stone article, she was pretty furious. She said that Rolling Stone has been irrelevant since 1990 and that they were sellouts and haven't done their homework. I actually think Pink might have a point here. For her performance not to be included on the list at all, especially not in the top 5, seems like it was a mistake made by some Gen Z social media intern who honestly forgot or doesn't even remember that performance because it was groundbreaking at the Grammys. Do you think Pink is seeing red for no reason, or is she totally justified in feeling stiffed? Let's talk makeup trends. I'm disturbed and I'm scared.
It's all an illusion. I'm wearing makeup. I'm wearing makeup, 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 makeup.
Multiple times over the last week on Instagram and in real life, I have seen girls doing the full face of foundation thing where they put it on everywhere on their face, like even their lips, which is one of my biggest pet peeves ever.
Bury me in lip kits and eyeshadow.
That is one of the most hideous looks to have your face look all one color like that. No blush, no lip color, just completely beige or whatever, up and down. When I was in high school, girls used to do this and I thought it was ugly then too. So I really hope it's not coming back. I need to know if you've seen that lately, and I hope that I'm the only one, because then maybe it was just a few random girls that don't know what they're doing.
If you saw me, would you call the police?
Now, another trend that you need to be aware of. We are using disposable cameras now. Every bar, every club, you aren't cool if you don't have a disposable camera taking pics or an old digital camera. The worse the quality, the better. I don't know how to explain it, but nostalgia is so in with Gen Z that they actually prefer everything to be old looking, from their clothes to their technology. I hope the disposable camera thing is a slippery slope into bringing sidekicks back. If Apple could make a sidekick type phone that has all the smartphone capabilities but a full keyboard you can type on, I would lose my mind.
I don't know if you guys remember from Zoe 101, the tech mate. This is like the tech mate from Zoe 101. Does that make sense? Here's how it works. So this is the phone, and you would move this thing, hold on, like this. Oh my God, I'm holding it upside down. but you'd move it like that. You would have a full keyboard here and then the screen up here, and then here you would control everything. There are so many pictures of Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton using this phone. It is just such a moment, such an era, and they always had it like pink and bedazzled.
Here are a couple extra headlines that you need to know.
Hot Take Tuesday.
Denzel Washington says he prayed with Will Smith after his Oscar slap. Apparently, during the commercial break, he and Tyler Perry went over to Will to calm him down and started to pray over him, saying, "Who are we to condemn? I don't know all the ins and outs of the situation, but I know the only solution was prayer, the way I see it." Will Smith is definitely gonna need a lot of prayer because experts say his brand is forever tarnished and that he's now damaged goods in the industry. There seems to be truth to this, as one of his projects with Netflix that was supposed to be coming out relatively soon has been put on hold.
Mind your business, that's all. Mind your business.
According to the Daily Wire, retired NFL tight end Shannon Sharpe, a sports analyst on Fox Sports 1, faced backlash over the weekend, as he should, for saying that he would rather pay $20 for a gallon of gas than have former President Donald Trump still in the White House.
What is it like where you come from?
So out of touch. Some genuinely believe that these gas prices are somehow a better solution for America. Like, let's just have everyone broke and miserable as long as feelings are spared. Don't you love the left?
I'll give you $40 worth of coupons for a burrito with cheese. It's all I've got.
Then there was all that controversy last week with Disney over the Don't Say Gay bill. And while people were speaking out about that in America, guess what Disney was secretly doing? Starting Disney Plus streaming services in countries like Qatar and Yemen, where being homosexual is illegal. I give up. Disney's list of hypocrites is longer than Rapunzel's stupid hair.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, the back of your head is ridiculous.
Another massive thank you to Matt and Chrissy Hammer from Men Design for designing the new Politics set. Politics has done a lot of growing lately, all thanks to you, so it made sense that the set be, you know, a little bit more grown up. And if you haven't heard Matt and Chrissy's insane story of being discriminated against by HGTV for being a white American family, then listen to season 1, episode 23 of The Spillover. Like this episode to show the new set some love. Momservatives, how do you really feel about mommy blogging snack art? And everyone tell us what you think of the new set in the comments. We have some really fun reels coming soon too to share the transformation and even what brand everything is. If there's something that you see there like, oh my gosh, I like that, I want it in my own house. Share this episode with a friend who doesn't leave the house without her disposable camera, and then click that save button. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is the brand new Politics. Clearly, Politics is best served visual, but you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts if you prefer to listen while you're in the car, on your way to work, what have you. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and more. Plus, subscribe to Politics on YouTube. And don't forget, make sure you're leaving those 5-star reviews.